This is the Awesemo hotline. Please call with your DFS concerns.
Good, fam. Happy Monday to everybody, first of all, and welcome to the tip-off, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasies, plays, and bets on tonight's 11-game NBA slate and 9-game MLB slate. I am your host, Kayla Knierim, and we've got a crew for you today. Eric Lindquist is back. He's dancing. He's making his fiance mad. And we've got Chris Spags, who's pulling double duty. Didn't even look at the run sheet, but he's a pro, so he's got this. Guys, how we doing?
I'm feeling good, excited to be here. It's funny because I just haven't done a show in so long. It's not like I was just talking about MLB 5 minutes ago. But the thing is, for the MLB part, boy, I've never been more prepared for biggest bat and biggest arm. And that's really what matters. But excited to be here, excited to make fun of Eric's glasses that are just already. He looks like he's wearing those Groucho Marx fake disguise noses and glasses. But
and raw.
Yeah, but I'm excited. I'm happy to be here. So now I turn it over to Eric to defend himself.
I hope you had a great weekend too, Spags. Mine was great as well. So great to make your acquaintance once more. This is lovely. So my fiance's on this important work call right now. She works at Paramount. She does like premieres and stuff for them, and they're rescheduling a bunch of stuff for Top Gun 2. So nothing better than having your fiance in the other room screaming Hakuna Matata as loud as he can. That's very helpful.
Spags missed it. Eric was singing Hakuna Matata like very loudly. She comes in, yells at him. It was great.
Yep. I like another Monday in the Lindquist household. Yeah, just good times. Honestly, who doesn't make fun of me, even including my fiance?
Eric, you are giving me a little emo vibes today with those glasses, though.
Dashboard confessional. How we doing?
Oh my gosh. Breathe in for
luck.
Okay.
It doesn't work on Zoom. Doesn't work. It's going to overlap.
To sing along today because we are only with you for 45 minutes. We are back at 4 p.m. Eastern. So let's get to it. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that is in season. We want to talk to you about our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $20. Be your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. Let's jump right on into our bad beats. This weekend was full of Cedi talk, Pacers chalk, and Westbrook shock. Oh, look at Eric being a little rhymer. As he had his worst outing of the season Sunday, for which there is no one else to blame but me. What were some of your other bad beats over the weekend, fellas? Eric, we'll start with you.
Oh, you landed the dismount. That's what mattered there at the end. So a lot of Pacers talk the last couple of days. It's just kind of been absurd. Glad that TJ McConnell didn't completely luck box into a game yesterday. That felt like paying the rake on stuff. It was kind of a nice weekend for the most part, except for Russell Westbrook yesterday, who sunk about 2/3 of my lineups before it even started. Luckily, had a couple of stragglers that broke away, had a lot of exposure to Draymond Green, which helped out in the late night hammer yesterday. But overall, pretty average weekend for the most part. MMA fights were pretty good as well. I did well betting them. Not so good in DFS there, but overall pretty good.
Yeah, I would say for me, I mentioned this on the MLB strategy show this morning with our pal Greg Ehrenberg, but on Saturday, there was a weird situation with the Pacers game being inadvertently locked early by, I think, all the sites, but especially Draftkings, definitely, that was one I was playing on. I had that lock early, ended up screwing up some of my lineups, or at least it looked like. So I emailed customer support like a good person there, trying to make sure to put it on their radar, not only to help, but also just so I could be flagged so I get a refund or whatever if I were screwed over. And they did the thing they did for a lot of people out there, offered, I think, the difference between your winnings on the night and whatever you put in, because it was something that screwed up a couple of people's, or definitely enough people's lineups out there. And for me, ended up screwing it up for myself by, this is the best situation you could be in where you're basically not paying for all of your entries. I ended up winning $20. So I got nothing out of that experience. And I feel like that's the worst possible outcome, where I would have rather lost every dollar or, won a tournament with the lineups being in. And that's like a classic bad beat in DFS, where they are so reluctant to credit anything back. I could have gotten my credit, and nope, instead had to be a chump and just win myself $20 that I immediately gave back in MMA anyway.
Complaining about winning, textbook Spags. Textbook.
It's a humble brag, really.
Oh, that's really. Oh, I have more money. It's awful. Go ahead.
Really quickly, what did you think of the MMA fight?
I mean, the Weidman one, that was so brutal to see that happen. I felt really, really bad for him. But also, Uriah Hall, like his handling of that was phenomenal. Like his interview. Did you see his interview after that fight? Just basically saying that I'm going to give him the fight as soon as he gets healthy. Just props up to him and his family if he can get healthy or whatever else. I owe him this. I thought that was really classy. So in a sport that's sometimes very intense and back and forth, where there's not a lot of friends here and there, it's fun to see some of the competitors that just have a lot of respect for what they go through. That doesn't always get shown in the octagon.
And since I never have a chance to talk about this, Uriah Hall was a guy who taught me MMA when I was doing that for about a 9-month window before I was getting hurt a lot. And it's been fun to see him continue to do fights and be out there, and was sad to see him be on that situation. But tell you what, he got all the fantasy points on Draftkings. That was an important part. But one of the worst leg breaks, Kayla, I don't know if you saw that leg break video. I don't know if you're a squeamish type. I feel like maybe, but maybe not. I don't know. One of the worst leg breaks I think that's ever taken place in sports, because his shin hit the other guy's shin, and then basically the foot wrapped around his legs.
Ew.
And then he hit it coming down too, which was because I mean, the Anderson Silva one is the one that everybody kind of goes to, where it was horrendous, but this was even somehow worse. I don't know how, but it was.
Yeah, it was like leg tetherball, basically, was what his foot was.
Ew! Oh my gosh, gross. I think the worst one I've ever seen was the college basketball player. When was that?
Louisville.
Kevin
Smith.
That one was bad. That was bad. Alex Smith, obviously. Dax this year was pretty gross.
Gordon Hayward. Yeah, we've had some bad ones.
I was deep into a Kings game on Saturday night, so I just saw the highlights, whatever was on Twitter. So I wasn't watching, but I missed the gruesome injury, which is probably for the best. Spags, I had no idea you did MMA, by the way.
I do. I've done a lot of things. I had a period where, like a lot of people in my mid-20s, I was just looking for something different fitness wise. Had a lot of fun doing it. But yeah, I tore the tendon in my foot, not the Achilles, but I forget what it's called now, but it's like the middle one that's under the bridge of your foot. And I'm saying all the wrong terms here. I should absolutely know the
We need Dr. Rasa. Dr. Rasa's not here today. But
unfortunately, that's where you need your money doctor the most. Your foot injuries. But no, I basically broke a hand, then also tore a tendon in my foot where I was in a walking boot for 2 months. It was that's probably enough for me. I learned enough where I feel like if anybody attacked me on the street, I'd be able to handle myself. And besides that, I don't think I was long for a professional MMA career, as you might be able to guess by looking at me and my sweet punchable face.
It was Kevin Ware. Thank you to
That's it, Kevin Ware.
Yeah, Kevin Ware was the gruesome injury. Okay, we're going to get to the NBA now, which is why we're all here. Let's get to our key news. The Mavericks, Luka Doncic, Kristaps Porzingis, Dorian Finney-Smith, Josh Richardson, and Maxi Kleber are all questionable for Monday night. Spags, how are you handling the madness that could ensue in this late night hammer versus the Kings?
It's always tough to prognosticate these things in advance, because you honestly don't know which configuration these guys are going to be in there. And we talk about it sometimes, and it ends up being the one configuration we don't talk about in the show. So in the name of my sanity, I'm just going to say whoever is playing for the Mavericks looks good, because they're going against Sacramento, who is very bad and is going to be worse because of not having De'Aaron Fox in the mix playing defense. And he's already been, doing the best he could amidst the team that's just getting strafed by everybody, playing fast, not giving up, not stopping anything really. I think that's the spot for the Mavericks, where if Luka ends up out, you're going to want to play Jalen Brunson. Or if Luka's out and Porzingis is in, you want to play Porzingis. Whatever combination of Mavs you're going to get here, it gets a little bit less, hey, I could play a bunch of guys if Luka's in, but if Luka's out, play everybody. If Luka's in and a lot of these other guys are out, play everybody, play Luka, but play a few guys, I guess, would really be the main. I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah, honestly,
NBA, and it always screws us over.
So this is late season NBA at its finest. But the main reason that this is kind of the first thing off the bat is that this game is a standalone island game sitting at 10 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Now, if we get news with the injury report that comes out at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, 2:30 out here on the West Coast, if we get that news that one or both are in, or if we get news that every single person listed there is out, then you're going to have that news ahead of time, and they're going to become mega chalk because of the matchup against the Kings, who are dead last in defensive efficiency by more than 1.5 points, which is just a ridiculous margin to be that bad at preventing other teams from scoring a basketball. But such is life when you're the Kings. I have to let it be known also that I am kind of cheering for this news not to come out until way, way later, until after 9 p.m., because with 11 games, I think inherently people are going to avoid the risk by either having Porzingis or Luka in their lineups, because there's nowhere to spend that salary in that game if it locks out. Like if that news comes out, if they're true game time decisions and it comes out after 9 p.m., they're going to be like 1% owned. And if you can get 1% owned Luka Doncic on this slate, or I guess Porzingis is right now garnering some ownership because he's 8K over on DraftKings, already stands out as a phenomenal play. And I would expect him to be a little bit more owned. But because you have Jokic, you have so many other spend ups, that money's going to get spent earlier. And so I just want everybody to kind of have a game plan in place. It matters so much more when, like the timing of this news than the news itself, because people will be able to react to it so easily if it comes out at the 2:30, 5:30 Eastern time injury report, as opposed to if it comes out after lock, where people are going to be on the fly with it. It's going to be similar to that Sixers situation when you had Embiid, Tobias Harris, and everybody ruled out in that Utah game, and you saw Ben Simmons go for 60 plus.
Similar to the Mavs, the Sixers have Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, and Danny Green all questionable tonight. Eric, which pieces would you prioritize if they're ruled in, and who would you be turning to if each is out?
It's almost like I planned that segue with Sixers, and I actually didn't, which is fantastic, even having put together a run sheet and such. But yeah, I'm pretty much going to prioritize. So Joel Embiid, if he plays, is just an absolute monster. I will continue to be over the field on him. You get a little bit of a discount. Not that money really matters on a slate that's going to be as starsy and scrubsy as this one is. But Joel Embiid, if you were to get Ben Simmons out, just jumps into ridiculous levels, 40+% usage, going to completely do everything for this team. I believe it was 1.88 DraftKings points per minute with Ben Simmons off the floor this year. That's stupid. You also have the possibility of Tobias Harris getting off the floor, another massive upgrade that could be just like making him perhaps my favorite tournament play on the slate. You're getting him at an absolute fraction of ownership from Jokic, so he'd become a huge priority at center. If you get Joel Embiid out, we kind of know the Dwight Howard route. I think that's been a little bit more predictable with Tony Bradley out of town now. I think that you can basically, with confidence, even if Mike Scott comes in and plugs a couple minutes here and there, I still will love Dwight Howard, and I'll find it hard to get away from having some exposure there on both sides. But let it be known, Ben Simmons, the least of the priority out of everybody there, just because of his current form. I hate putting it that way. If you were to, however, get Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid both out and he were to play, yeah, it's going to be hard to turn away from that, regardless of it being an 11-game slate.
Yeah, I would agree there. I think the least appealing configuration would be if somehow Embiid and Tobias miss, and then you end up with Ben Simmons out there, and you're going to have to play him because that's the way it's going to go. But I think I would have the least confidence in that situation. I think the best situation would be if you get Embiid playing with Tobias and Ben Simmons out, because we've seen gigantic upside. I think it's still fine to play Embiid in a pretty good amount if you get Tobias and Ben Simmons out. But I think I'd rather just see both those guys out, because I think then the ceiling is certainly much more in effect for Embiid going against an Oklahoma City team. It's going to be greatly overmatched, and the floor is also there. And I think that's the main part, because I think an Embiid team, whether it's just him or whether it's some configuration, these guys being in, there are a lot of ways here that Oklahoma City just can't hang in, and we see decreased run for Embiid. So I think at least if you get the two guys out, he's going to be about as productive as he can be, even if the game somehow does get away. But there's another spot to me, the Thunder, playing against them. That's been a spot some people are afraid to go to, because the Thunder are mostly overmanned when they're playing in basically any matchup. Today, they're about a 12-point dog. I think the last that I looked actually might be a 13-point dog now. That's not a great spot to be in, but I do think, they play fast. They play poor defense. You sort of have to play teams against them and not be afraid of, these guys might lose out on fourth quarter run. It seems they're so productive in the first three quarters anyway that it might not even matter. So I think, to me, just playing whatever Sixers you end up with, unless you end up with all three guys in, because if all three guys are in, I think they're basically unplayable. And that's going to be the fun of DFS and the fun of the deeper dive and live before lock coming after us. You basically have to account for all these things and in the various ways as the NBA is so special and making us have to prepare for every day.
Indeed. Russell Westbrook is questionable with a sprained ankle, which could propel Bradley Beal into priority status. So Spags, where does he rank amongst the top end studs on the slate should Westbrook sit, and who else from the Wizards sticks out to you?
So I think, to me, obviously with Westbrook, if you were to play, I have no issue playing him again. I know that's, maybe people feel burned by whatever lack of output you got yesterday, but Westbrook's still so fantastic. You have to get there if he's in. And then if he's out, I think Beal, to me, becomes one of the better plays on the slate. The price point's still not the best. And I do think I would have a tough time choosing Beal over Paul George. I think that's the one that I would really be looking at, because Paul George without Kawhi is also a very good play that I would have projected around 50 fantasy points. But I think Beal and Paul George, to me, would could become like a 1A, 1B on the slate with maybe a slight lean towards Paul George, with Beal getting more assist upside. He's not going to rebound like Westbrook, but is going to shoot a bunch more shots. I think that Beal becomes certainly a core part of what you're doing. But to me, a play that would still be slightly behind Paul George in the overall hierarchy of the slate.
Yeah, fortunately, we can play Bradley Beal over at a small forward position now, too, over on DraftKings. So it's not necessarily a pure either or between the two. But yeah, Bradley Beal would be kind of out of the realm of playable. Has an upside, but 9,700 over on DraftKings. Kind of wouldn't be super interested over there. Looking at the full slate on FanDuel, because of Fred VanVleet's existence at 7,300 and Tyrese Haliburton at 6,100, you're going to see a lot of the ownership kind of getting soaked up in that direction as well. So I think Bradley Beal still going to be a little bit of a contrarian spend up for the most part, but going to stick out much more so over on FanDuel. But looking at some of these other pieces, can we talk about how good Daniel Gafford has been? Up to 27 minutes. I like seeing that for him. Very, very productive on this basketball team. I'm excited to hear what Adam has to say about him today as the de facto Wizards savant that we have on staff here at Awesemo. But Daniel Gafford, 27 minutes. I think in certain matchups, I don't know if the Spurs necessarily fit the mold of like a bigger front court spot, but with the absence of Deni Avdija now for the rest of the year, with Rui Hachimura continuing to be out, I think Gafford can kind of soak up some of those minutes at the 4, jump over from the center position. And I just like his profile. 3,900 on DraftKings where you can play 2. Great. He's power forward eligible all the way up to 5,100, makes for maybe a little bit of a contrarian stance. But my God, the guy has an absolute ceiling in limited minutes. 27 minutes, put up 46.2 FanDuel points, played 24 minutes, 39 2 games ago in 24 minutes. Limited minutes, if he gets those minutes extended to 28, 30 in some spots, I mean, he's just a productive basketball player.
Cedi Osman is currently the highest owned player on both sides tonight as the Cavs are down to 9 active bodies. Eric, what's your interest level of investing in Osman for a second consecutive night?
So yesterday he was a product of the slate being a 4-gamer. You needed to find some value. He was down to 3,100. He's not 3,100 anymore. He is shooting dependent. He had some high usage again, up over 20%. I'm expecting these numbers on Cedi to start coming down as more value emerges. I'm curious what that injury report will be at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time I keep referring to, but keeping track of news and what value is going to emerge. The later value emerges, the more valuable it can be because it will be lower owned than it should be throughout this entire slate. Cedi's the guy who just sticks out right now. And I always try to remind myself on some of these bigger slates that the value that exists now is going to continue to be popular. It's what people have written up on different sites. It's what sits at the top of their board. If people are making lineups early, that's going to be the guy who's plugged into a bunch of them because he's the best value that exists right now. But he will not be the best value that exists closer to lock. He will not be. I refuse to believe that. I don't think it's the case. Even though the Cavs are shorthanded, even though he'll have plenty of opportunity, we're going to see other value emerge. And you just need to keep that in mind that he will continue to be high owned pretty much no matter what on this slate. So keep that in mind. He will be popular, and I'm going to try to find other routes to go. I will still have a little bit because I think he plugs in well at a small forward position and kind of covers you on DraftKings and FanDuel, and it's understandable coming off of a good game. But if he goes out and shoots the ball poorly yesterday, we're not necessarily having this conversation. So be very sensitive to some of the other value that shows up throughout the day.
So I think to me, this is something that would have been a different situation earlier in the day where I was very much on the same page as Eric. And I think Eric raised a lot of good points too about the value opening up. There's going to be better value plays that do open up. But I think Osman has become a better play throughout the day because of some of the guys who've been ruled out, where Larry Nance is going to be out for a little bit. Hartenstein's going to be out. You also have Lamar Stevens out. Dellavedova is going to be out. So now it's not that he's just getting the minutes bump of not having Colin Sexton in. He also has just more ability to be productive with that court time he's going to have. So I think Osman has become a better play as a result of there just being less Cavs available, where he's going to have to do more in addition to just getting the court time. And that's something I mentioned on Live Before Lock Show. It's been really helpful for me in my process the last few weeks, is just not trying to build my lineups around guys who aren't getting a per minute boost, but the guys who are just getting a court time boost, because court time can go away. And even though there are less guys in the mix, like a Broderick Thomas could seize a few more minutes. So if Cedi's just the same amount of productive, but he sees, let's say, 5 less minutes because Broderick Thomas is running hot in the second unit or something, like that's going to make Cedi a bad play. But I think now Cedi gets better per minute. He's also also getting more minutes. So even if he loses a few of those minutes because of something breaking against him, he's going to be better in the core time he has. And I think that makes Osman feel less like a bad value play. I would agree with Eric. I think there might be some better value plays that pop up. But for me right now, I think Osman looks much better than he did earlier in the day, just because you're going to have less Cavs out there taking production and being productive in a way that Osman can now be for himself.
One thing just quickly before we go, sorry, Kayla, just throwing it out there. This is like the most important slate I can remember in a long time, where you need to be using the boom bust tool. Like, it just comes down to being sensitive to every single person's ownership, because this is an 11-game slate and we have an absolute crazy late night hammer that could emerge. And you have to just know by default that if that news doesn't break before lock, that everybody's going to go lower owned, regardless of how that news shakes out. Doncic will be lower owned than he should be, and all the value will be, because people are going to flock and lock up so much ownership in a guy like Cedi in an early game at 3,800. Going over to the boom bust tool, he's the most negatively leveraged guy. Now, that being said, he's 43% chance to boom. So he's a phenomenal play in that regard. But right now, coming in with 58% ownership on DraftKings, only in the optimal around 37%, you rarely see negative 20 leverage, and it's an 11-game slate. So just keep that in mind. I'm right there with you, Spags. I think he is a good play who's definitely profiled even better as the day's gone on. But that's why the tools here at Awesemo, having something like the boom bust tool that you can refer to quickly and make informed decisions and not guess, is such a big advantage on a slate like this.
Great point, Eric. Tyler Hero and Kendrick Nunn are questionable for the Heat in their matchup versus the Bulls, despite the super low total in this game. Spags, would you have any interest in any Heat pieces in the aftermath of that news?
I mean, I think if you get Nunn and Hero out, I think you certainly have to give a boost to Butler and Dragic, assuming that those guys are both available too. I think right now this team mostly looks unplayable to me, because the minutes projection assumes that Butler is going to be playing, that Nunn's going to be playing, that Hero is going to be playing, and that Dragic is going to be playing. And that's really the spot to avoid for the most part with me with Miami, where you have all four guys healthy. You play Jimmy Butler on Fanduel on any given night because of the positionality and how that works out. And he's got, a pretty good floor and a pretty good ceiling. But on DraftKings, I find myself not getting to Heat players very often when you do have all these guys available, just because they all take away from each other, especially now where Oladipo's been out for a long enough time period as well, that the price points now reflect where these guys have been without Oladipo as well. I just think it's a very crowded backcourt now, and you can pay for the studs. You can go to the studs always, and that's going to be Jimmy Butler here. But I think if you are getting these guys in, they're not playable, and if you get them out, just give everybody else a boost, and you're probably going to end up with a good amount of them.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler, that's really the highlighted point on this. I think because he's able to be played as a small forward position, you talk about him compared to Beal, I think it becomes a much more interesting question, especially if, it becomes not a question to me if Russell Westbrook's ruled in, because I think Jimmy Butler would just stand out if you get both of those guys out. This is really just where it comes down to paying attention to who's questionable, who's not. We have 27 questionable players going into tonight. Like, that's a ridiculous number, and trying to figure out what we're going to be doing with all of them going forward is such a key to this slate. Like, just reacting to the news and having an idea in place of what you're going to do as things trickle in. We're going to have plenty of time to react to most of it, because I would assume it's going to happen in the next hour. But on the backside of it, anybody who's a game time decision, we're going to have to be making quick, informed decisions. I think just knowing straight ahead that, like, for me, I'm sure I'll get to a tiny bit of Bam because he does have a ceiling, but we have some mega ceilings at center that make it hard for me to really want to prioritize him in any meaningful way on DraftKings or FanDuel. But I really think Jimmy Butler, especially on DraftKings, where he won't be crazy owned, even in the aftermath of that, makes for an interesting spend up at small forward to be over the field on.
All right, let's head over to our one-on-one in these battles between stars. Which player would you guys rather have in NBA DFS or prop bets tonight? We've got MVP frontrunner Nikola Jokic has a home matchup versus the Grizzlies, in which he will be the most popular center on the board tonight, while Karl Anthony Towns draws a tough Rudy Gobert matchup for a second consecutive game versus the Jazz. So, Eric, which big man would you rather side with in tournaments tonight, Jokic or Towns?
I'm going to go the Karl Anthony Towns side of this, which is very, very strange. But going back to the boom bust tool as well, Nikola Jokic on an 11-game slate, this is just where you have to be sensitive to what ownership's at. He's around 40% on DraftKings. He's at 38.2%. He's only in the optimal around 20% of the time. That is a gigantic gap between those two here at the moment. I don't understand. I do understand because he has the biggest ceiling. He's the highest projected player here. But if you're going to give me like a 4% Towns, who's basically at flat leverage, going to bust a lot of the time. I know that we have D'Angelo Russell coming back into the mix. We have all of these things that possibly are going against him. But if you're going to give me him at 1/10 of the ownership and you're trying to identify a ceiling, yeah, you save the $300. That's pretty negligible. But I feel like Karl Anthony Towns has proven to still have a ceiling there. It's a tough Rudy Gobert matchup. Just got done, in a close grudge match, putting up under 50 fantasy points there. But I think just in terms of tournaments, I would try to get to a little less Jokic and a tiny bit more than where the field is on Karl Anthony Towns.
So I get what Eric is saying here, and I think that's certainly one of the things in DFS I would never find any argument with, really, is if you don't want to go to Jokic, you go to an Embiid, you go to a Towns, and just hope the ceiling can be there for them on a day that Jokic is underperforming. And that was the case on the last slate with Jokic too, where he was fantastic per minute, ended up not getting fourth quarter run because the game was out of hand against Houston, and that ended up kind of making him not optimal, even though I forget if he ended up in the winning tournament lineup or not, but he definitely looked a little bit over-owned according to the boom bust tool. Could be the same situation today. The one thing that I have concern with is that I think Memphis could keep this one close, and I do think if you see a full run of minutes here for Jokic, I think it could be tough for Towns to beat that projection. For the median projection for me right now, I have Jokic at 60 fantasy points, Towns at a little bit under 50, and that's a pretty big discrepancy for the two guys. So I think I would take Jokic between these two. I do think the more compelling argument could be made is just having a different lineup construction entirely, where you go a Mason Plumlee at center. I think that to me has some degree of appeal on DraftKings, not quite the same thing on Fanduel because you need to get that raw score. But I think that to me has a little more appeal. So I would favor Jokic in the one-on-one. And I think if you are going to get different in tournaments, I think just, the way you get different to me would be Embiid having no Simmons, having Tobias Harris. Maybe he doesn't end up as appropriately owned as he should be. But I just think Towns, it's a little bit hard for me to get there, even though if you wanted to get 5%, I really wouldn't have any gripe with it.
Tyrese Haliburton did not disappoint last night as the starting point guard in De'Aaron Fox's absence, while Jordan Clarkson still has all the usage in the world to work with as Donovan Mitchell continues to be out. So Spags, who do you prefer in this battle, Haliburton or Clarkson?
So I think I would go Haliburton's way just because I think there's a pretty big runway for him to continue to have better results. And I think the thing that jumped out to me was the fact that he put up 20 shots in that game. And maybe that won't be there every night. Maybe you see Buddy Hield start to take a little more, maybe a Holmes or I don't even know who else. So I guess a Barnes maybe could start to take more shots at some point. But I think to me overall, I would think that Haliburton continues to see that same upside just because Fox was a guy with a 30 to 35% usage rate every single game. That has to go somewhere. And it didn't go to Delon Wright either. So I think I'm just more of a believer in Haliburton. Clarkson can certainly have the outlier days in terms of scoring, and the spot against Minnesota is one that you're going to have pretty much carte blanche to get any buckets you want. And I think that is a bit of a fear, but Haliburton contributes in every category. If he can get a high usage rate and also assist and also rebound and get a few steals, I think that makes him have the higher ceiling than Clarkson. So I would just have to go his way, even though both look like perfectly fine plays.
Yeah, I'm going to go Haliburton, but I'm going to go there for a completely different reason. And it goes back to this Mavericks idea of gives you an extra roster spot. So I'm going to prioritize him just to be able to have that later roster spot sitting there in the 10 p.m. window, 7 p.m. out here on the West Coast, just so that if I need to make some swaps, if I prioritize him, if I give a boost to Dallas guys. Now, I'm not sure whether I want to prioritize Doncic or Porzingis. Again, that will just kind of be a decision I have to make as we get closer to lock, whether we get that news or not. But I think because of how much exposure I'm going to be having to Dallas on the back end of this game, I feel like I'm happy to take the risk to wait on all of that news. I think prioritizing a guy like Haliburton, who might be just a tiny bit now 6,800, not projecting nearly as well as he did yesterday, sitting a little bit cheaper, still 6,100 on Fanduel, a fantastic play sitting right next to Clarkson. But I think boosting the projection of Haliburton makes a lot more sense just because you do get that extra spot to be able to mix and match some of those Dallas pieces should you get news to break in your favor. And I kind of want to be sitting there with all of the swappability at the end.
Torrey Craig erupted for 41.5 DraftKings points in 32 minutes of run Sunday, while Cameron Johnson did the opposite. So seeing as they're both extremely popular at the moment, who would you rather choose in between these two, Eric, Craig or Johnson? Spit it out, Dave.
Yeah, that's fine. Just blame me. I feel good about that. Cameron Johnson is going to be the priority for me. Torrey Craig kind of came out of the middle of nowhere there. Both are getting a lot of ownership on DraftKings. I was a little bit surprised, but I guess I probably shouldn't be. Torrey Craig getting any kind of, we know of him as like the defensive stalwart in his time at Denver. Went to Milwaukee, wasn't really a featured piece there whatsoever, but kind of fits this Phoenix mold pretty darn well. So I get why he's getting the ownership there, but Cameron Johnson can definitely be the guy who could actually spike you an upside to to be able to win you a tournament. I know he's more expensive at 4,300 on DraftKings, but actually has the 3-point ability, playing more minutes, 30s minutes the last 3. I'm just not sure that Torrey Craig is going to be somebody that they rely on to be playing minutes into the 30s here. If you look in the previous box scores for games, I mean, he hadn't played over 22 minutes in a game until this Brooklyn explosion, where he was out there running around with Kyrie and Kevin Durant playing fantastic defense. I don't think that necessarily needs to exist against the Knicks today. And I think it just seems to be at 3,500. Yeah, I like the stars and scrubs element of it, but I'm probably going to be lighter on both of them than the field. Again, I'm making a big stand on some of this Mavericks news late, but if I'm picking one, I'm going to take Cameron Johnson just for his ability to knock down open shots, be a 3-point sharpshooter. That's what he was in North Carolina, and his time in college, came into the NBA. Hasn't necessarily realized his potential yet, but I'd rather be willing to take shots with more guaranteed minutes, I feel like, than what I have for Torrey Craig.
Yeah, I think I'm with what one thing that Eric said there was just being under on both guys. I think to me, and this goes back to Cedi Osman, where if we're going to have ownership going to Cameron Johnson or to Torrey Craig, I think that Cedi's the better play than those two guys. I think, relative to ownership, as Eric mentioned with the boom bust tool, I think that gets a little bit uglier and a little bit thornier, but I don't think it's going to look too favorably upon any of these guys really, and based on the ownership that I'm seeing right now. So I just don't have the biggest faith in Cameron Johnson or Torrey Craig playing against a Knicks team that plays slow, that also only gives up 34% shooting from deep, that gives up 44% shooting from the floor. This is about the worst possible spot, I would think, to expect these guys to have outlier efforts. And the field's ownership right now screams that people think these guys are going to have outlier efforts, or they think they open up everything else. And I just don't see how Cameron Johnson being more expensive than Cedi opens up things that I'm not getting from there. And Torrey Craig, I think at the price point, you could sort of argue it a little bit more. But again, like Eric was saying, the minutes are more secure for Cam Johnson. So I just think there are reasons to kind of nickel and dime both guys. And the net result for me will probably be definitely being under whatever the ownership is, even if I get some amount of these guys.
All right. It is now time for one of our favorite things here on the tip off, called 6 segments, 11 minutes. Let's go. It's a marathon and a sprint today, folks. All right. No house advantage prop or not. Here are some of No House Advantage's top props of the day for key players. Do you like the over or under on them? And how many points would you assign? We've got Anthony Davis over under 15.5 points plus assists. Spags.
Anthony Davis, I think for me, I would want to take the over on this one, just because Awesemo has him in getting 27 minutes today. That's pretty close to where you want AD to be just to beat that one. I think in terms of raw points, I have him scoring 18.4 regular real life points today. So I think it's not too far off to get there if you get some of the other categories. I think points plus rebounds to me gets a little more confidence, but I don't know. Actually, I didn't look at Awesemo's probabilities before the show, so that's going to be something where maybe I'm off about it. I don't think this feels like the highest probability one to me, but I would skew over, and I think to me feels like a 5 or 6 pointer.
Yeah, it's going to be closer to one of the higher probability ones. Okay. We're going to forgive you because you're out here doing all the work for Awesemo.com, doing all the things, rushing around, getting things done here for
frantically
us.
Frantically peeing, really. That's the main thing.
Peeing. That's an adult response. I like that. Anthony Davis definitely smashed the over on these, 15.5. We saw him get closer to 30 minutes here. I think he is going to get an allotment rate around 30 minutes, which makes him on the fringe of viable for DFS. It's an 11 gamer, which makes it much more difficult. But if you told me that Anthony Davis went out and put up 65 fantasy points in 30 minutes, I wouldn't be surprised. So for NHA, 15.5 is actually your best over on the entire day. I think I'd be looking at investing in that and closer to my 8, 9, 10 point slots. He's going to be seeing extra minutes here. He has the entire usage to work with. Andre Drummond is not LeBron James with a ball in his hand. So definitely take the overs there.
RJ Barrett, 2.5 3-pointers made. Eric.
So take the under on some of these. So RJ Barrett isn't a guy who attempts a lot of 3-pointers that I'm going to really be worried about. RJ Barrett's kind of been falling down a little bit in usage, having Reggie Bullock back, sitting alongside him here. Slow game, fewer possessions. Everything's kind of trending down there. But yeah, 3 for 7, 2 for 8, 6 for 11. He's had some numbers where it's gone up here, but against Phoenix, a great defensive wings. I don't necessarily say individual matchups, but we just got done talking about Torrey Craig. They have McCall Bridges, who's one of the best individual defenders on the wings as well. RJ Barrett taking the under here makes a lot of sense because I don't know how many open threes he's going to be looking at in this matchup.
I think RJ Barrett to me looks like an under as well. And I think maybe I don't really get where the line is coming from no house advantage either, which I think is sometimes the benefit of no house advantage that we talk about on the show. But, he hasn't been a prolific 3-point shooter. He had a stretch where he had a few more, but I think that was also because of some of the guys being out of the lineup who are now back in. So going against Phoenix, another team who does stifle 3-point shooters, as Eric just mentioned, I don't see the reason why you'd want to buy in on RJ Barrett here. And I think another one to me that feels like a 7 or 8 pointer, I guess. And honestly, the Anthony Davis one, I should have known. I should have known Eric was throwing me a trick there, and that was a top one.
Threw you a trick. I threw you a softball, and you hit it into the dirt.
A real trickery there on old Eric. Those shady glasses of his tell the story of a lot of lies behind them.
Wow. All right. Finally, we have Terrence Ross, 17.5 points plus rebounds, Spags.
I think for me, this one would be an under. I don't have the most confidence in Terrence Ross generally. And I'm wondering where the trick is from all these other Eric props, but I think I don't have the most faith here. There's enough bodies in the Orlando rotation, playing the Lakers who are getting, more improved here, getting more bodies back into the mix. They're actually qualified and able to add quality defense. I think for me, any Terrence Ross bet, I would probably be on the under right now because he really hasn't shown anything in this court time where it did seem like he was going to be able to show anything he wanted.
There's two reasons that I put Terrence Ross here. One, if he's out, absolutely do not play him because you get a 0 on no house advantage if they get ruled out. Very important facet there. Number two, I think that this is kind of reliant on some of the other news. We have Otto Porter who's already out, but James Ennis is questionable. And so that becomes, when you get Kennedy now off the floor as well, who is playing, 10, 12 minutes here and there. Poor guy as well. If we want to talk about injuries, that was brutal. But I do like getting to the over here on Terrence Ross if he's going to play. I know we haven't seen the shot attempts necessarily getting there, but I would be taking the over. But the other facet of this entire thing is that you should be finding better props than this to be betting on NHA. This would be kind of closer to a 1 or a 2, but I think we can find better places than trying to mix and match and guess on Terrence Ross here. So work a little ways up the board on an 11-game slate. Find some of the better projected overs and some of the better projected unders and kind of go that direction.
All right. And friends, don't forget to play on No House Advantage. Download the No House Advantage app today and use promo code Awesemo to receive a deposit bonus of up to $20 for new signups. Beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. Let's head on over to the diamond, shall we? Here are some top bets and plays on tonight's MLB DFS slate. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? We've got Mike Trout plus 250. Byron Buxton plus 275, Joey Gallo plus 275, Mitch Haniger plus 290, and Ronald Acuna plus 300, which is what got Eric in trouble when we were saying Acuna. So Eric, we'll start with you.
I was going to say, so I'm looking at the plus 290 or the plus 300, and this comes down to batting order as well. They're hitting in the one hole, so they're going to get more at bats in the long run for it. You're just trying to target one home run. You're not trying to target a home run with RBIs. You're not trying to do whatever. So I think getting a couple extra bucks. I know Mike Trout sitting in the 2-hole plus 250, just ridiculous how good he is. I think that's not going to surprise anybody, but give me a little extra longer odds. Give me the extra 40 cents going up to Haniger or to Acuna there.
I think I would be inclined to take Joey Gallo and, Mike Trout. We talk about every time here he's going to be on the top odds getter, assuming that he plays today. I know that he said he's going to play. I think he said that yesterday too, didn't play. So just make sure to watch that one closely. But I do think the thing with going to Joey Gallo here is you're just buying into the volatility of what show Ohtani's going to be on the other side, where Ohtani's had a crazy strikeout rate in the limited sample size over the last season, a 30% K rate. He's also been very wild. He's also had a 3 whip to left-handed batters, hasn't faced a ton of them, but still just some erratic stuff from Shohei Ohtani so far, where wouldn't shock me if he struck out 10 guys today in whatever limited time he has out there. Wouldn't shock me if he walked 5 and gave up a grand slam. And I do think Joey Gallo is one guy who could benefit. So to me, I think, at that price point, a guy who's just pure power and not a lot else, I think taking Joey Gallo seems worthwhile to me against a potentially wild pitcher in Ohtani.
And now with biggest arm, which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best strikeouts over bet tonight? Which is the worst? We've got Corbin Burns 9.5, Trevor Rogers 7.5, Shohei Ohtani 6.5, Trevor Molly 6.5, and Sean Manaea 5.5 Spags.
I think this is one for Corbin Burns believers out there. There are going to be a lot of them on the DFS slate tonight. And I think, again, if you are playing a lot of him, take the under on a strikeout prop. But I do think there's no reason to want to do that in a bet if you are just, playing him straight away, where he has a 40% K rate, just under that 39.4% this year, plus last year. He has shown tremendous improvement in every possible way. He's facing a Miami team who also just doesn't have a lot of power hitters in the lineup. That's a 27% aggregate K rate in their projected lineup. Everything in this spot is favoring Burns. 6 guys who strike out above league average also in this Miami lineup. I think, to me, it's something that we talked about on the show, where I was trying to get cute, trying to get the margins on some pitchers of middling arm talent. And sometimes it'll work out for the JT Brewbakers of the world, those guys out there. But when you can get an incredibly talented guy like we saw Jacob deGrom the other night, I guess 10.5 strikeouts were enough for deGrom. I think it's the same thing for Burns here, where you could have had this number a little bit higher, and I still would have taken the over.
Yeah, Corbin Burns was going to be my pick too. So I guess I'll advocate for Shohei Ohtani. You just got done talking about some of the issues that he has had. Whip not pretty, but also crazy strikeout rate, right around 14.8 here per 9 on the season so far in a limited sample, but up to 80 pitches in his last outing. Like seeing that kind of trending up. As you said, wouldn't surprise me to see him get absolutely shelled, but hopefully he can get to 85, closer to maybe 90 pitches in that number as well. Going up against Texas just strikes out at a crazy rate as well. I like going to Shohei Ohtani on the over here.
All right, moving right on to good dog, bad dog. In real life, there is no such thing as a bad dog in betting. In DFS, there are a lot of underdogs who may have no chance in their game. So guys, who is a good dog to target and who's a bad one? Eric, give us your good and bad dog.
My good dog is probably going to be, oh man, this is gross, but the Minnesota Timberwolves plus 10 going up against the Jazz. It's a back-to-back that they've been playing. D'Angelo Russell is starting to play a little bit more here. They're getting healthier, played pretty competitively, ended up winning that first one outright. Getting 10 points here at home. I still feel like that's just a little bit too much to be getting there. I don't feel fantastic about it. And then my bad dog is going to be OKC going up against the Sixers, but that is completely dependent upon that news. We just got news that it sounds like Ben Simmons is going to play, so that's a good thing. Got to wait on Joel Embiid. He's kind of the big one there. But OKC just has nothing right now.
Yeah, my good dog's going to be Cleveland. I'm a believer, I guess, in this short shift Cavs team that's going to be going today. I think they can keep it going because Toronto's defense has just been not quite as good, as they've lost their way really with the injuries, the guys being out, the trades, all that stuff. I think the net results, I think Cleveland hangs this game. I don't know if they could win, but I do think they hang in this one. My bad dog is going to be Orlando, just because this line, I think, to me, sort of reflects the uncertain nature of Anthony Davis, but we believe that Anthony Davis will be playing more minutes. I think it should be more than a 10-point spread, where Orlando just has nobody left. They don't want to win. The Lakers are now trying to try to ramp up to playoff form. So I think the spot, the Lakers completely beat them down. So I think they would be my bad dog.
All right, Spags, which player or game looks like a make or break spot to you on tonight's slate?
I think it's going to be Cedi Osman. I didn't know, again, because I've been doing so much MLB stuff today, that Cedi Osman would be the place that I'm going to be, touting at way too much relative to what the field's going to be at. But I think I will be there with the field heavy today. I just think he's going to benefit from a lot of the stuff. And I think they hang in with Toronto. So I guess he'll be my make or break.
I think everybody knows by now, Dallas Mavericks, Sacramento Kings, that late night hammer is going to be a huge part of what I do. I'm going to inherit all the risk in the entire world. Hopefully that news comes out way later. I'm going to have probably both sides of it and just try to spike an upside.
All right. And is there one game, player, or team that you anticipate you'll have a lot less interest in than the rest of the public, Eric?
Cedi Osman.
For me, it is going to be Cam Johnson and Torrey Craig. And again, lock in Cedi Osman. Just ignore I hate that Eric's going to be right about this, and I'm going to be such a sad boy the next time I have to do a show with him.
15 ball incoming. Enjoy it.
Look at that, guys. Right on time. I have no idea how that happened. Fastest 45 minutes ever.
I'm going to go pee some more, I think.
Fabulous.
Have fun.
All right. It was great having Spags and Eric back together. Band back together. Gotta love it. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. The Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock are coming your way next. We'll be back with you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern or 4:30, either one of those. Back on the tip-off. Have a good one.
Later, guys. I will be more timely tomorrow. I'll figure out how to jump out a little early on the other show.
How dare you?
Later, guys.
Later.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
800 questionable players.
Yeah, we're back to peak April NBA.
Yeah, oh yeah, quickly. Let's go. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive. Buckle your seatbelts. We're in for a wild one. Today's show presented by OddsShopper.com. I am Dave Loughran. With me, Adam Scherer at ShipMyMoney DFS. Follow me at Lafayette_D, LOUGHY_D. 11 games, and it feels like at least 19 players from every team, which is more than deep is on the roster outside of Memphis. Are questionable today, man. This is going to be an insane slate. So we're happy to have you here because we're going to need all hour and 15 minutes of it.
Yeah, we haven't really had one of these in a while. We were getting them like day after day after day a couple of weeks ago, but then it kind of calmed down. But yeah, I mean, now we have one, just entire teams being questionable.
And it goes even further too, right? Because like not only do you have guys questionable, but then you have guys out like Ben Simmons that are now probable.
Yeah, went from out to questionable to likely to play, and the rest of the team is questionable.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. So we're happy to have you guys with us again. Just buckle up. We got a lot to get through. Sit back, relax, and hit that thumbs up before you do anything. Before we dive into any of this, hit that thumbs up. Show some love. It helps us out a ton here. And that subscribe button is more important than anything. We just hit 54 subs. We keep moving up in this world of DFS. You want the best DFS free content out there. Subscribe, help support the channel, and of course, hit that notification bell as well. And hey, if you wanted to join the YouTube fam, get access to those killer emojis, the Adams, the Josh with the stash, the Dr. Benz, the Loffies, the Emacs, all of that stuff, plus some badges to keep going up over time. That little join button down there is how you do it. Then you'll see the perks, a bunch of cool stuff. It's like $2.99 if you're interested. All right, let's make this happen. We have no time for pleasantries. If you're looking for that, well, the strategy show, 7 days a week, we got you covered. So let's just get right into it. Starting off with San Antonio and Washington. You have the Spurs on the road here, traveling to Washington, 4-point favorites, 227.5 total. It's a great matchup against the Wizards. Pace up spot, bad defense, and Russell Westbrook is now questionable on the second of a back-to-back. For San Antonio, I don't necessarily know how much we have to worry about injuries. Rudy Gay, Lonnie Walker Jr., or not Jr., Lonnie Walker was the fourth, is questionable. And the backcourt is at least remotely interesting because of how good this matchup is for them today. Let's kick it off with the likes of DeJounte Murray and Derek White.
Yeah, so first off, chill with the bad defense slander. This is the fourth best defensive rating over the last month for the Wizards. But
I don't buy it.
No, neither do I. I mean, I think they're improved from where they were at earlier this year. But yeah, I don't buy it either. And they're still the fastest paced team in the league. But yeah, I mean, with San Antonio, they're healthy-ish. I mean, Rudy Gay may or may not play, like you said. Lonnie Walker may or may not play. But as far as guys that really matter, and in the context of the slate, they're healthy. So it's hard to point to any one thing that looks great. But you do have pretty favorable pricing on DeJounte Murray in particular. 6,800 on Fanduel, 7,100 on Draftkings. We know that he's someone that contributes in every category. And there's the potential that we lose the top two priced guards on this slate, which would naturally force you to more mid-range point guards. So that's something where maybe you start to get the more DeJounte Murray if, for example, Westbrook or Luka were ruled out. But either way, I think a good spot for Murray. DeMar DeRozan, not quite as favorably priced, but still someone that in this spot should get a lot of possessions, averaging around 34 minutes per game over the last month. He's perfectly fine. But the other thing to keep in mind here too is that obviously we don't know when we're going to get news, but this is definitely a slate where, at least as a tiebreaker, if you're someone playing, a couple of lineups, skew towards not locking guys in early because we're going to get a ton of news after lock, most likely.
People are saying you look like the lead singer of Coldplay.
I think normally I look like Dustin May, so I'll take that as a compliment.
Chris Martin. All the Coldplay slander I always see, I hate it. I am unabashedly a fan of Coldplay's music. I don't care. I listen to all that shit. I have a wide range of musical preferences, and that's one of them. But yeah, I don't really see the Chris Martin comparison. I don't see Dustin May either, outside of me just being an asshole.
Yeah. I mean, I can see like I can see similarities in like certain features, but I don't think that I actually look like.
No, I don't see it at all. Yeah. Do you like anything else from the Spurs? And are you willing to pay? I know you talked about DeRozan being priced up. He's priced pretty different on DraftKings and Fanduel. Are you willing to get to $8,700 DeRozan on an 11-game slate on DraftKings?
No, I mean, I think it's pretty tough, especially one trend that you'll see, and I pointed it out in the deep dive article today, but the small forward position, like on DraftKings, obviously you need the roster one, but it doesn't have to actually be a small forward because of multi-position eligibility. There's a really big difference between small forward pricing on DraftKings and FanDuel today. There's a lot, like almost all the small forward options are like $1,000 less expensive on FanDuel. So, I mean, the fact that DeRozan is a small forward on DraftKings is nice, but because of MPE, you still don't really have to force him in, and he is really expensive. So I think, he's someone that if he were a small forward on FanDuel, he would look a lot better at 8,100, but at shooting guard, that's a pretty deep position today as well.
Anything from the front court you like?
I wouldn't say like. I mean, if you land on some Jakob Poeltl, it's fine. He should play 31, 32 minutes. We just saw, the upside that centers bring against Washington with Jared Allen going absolutely nuts yesterday. But there's a lot of really good center plays on the slate in pretty much all price ranges. All
right, so the Washington side gets really, really interesting if Westbrook sits. Now, I'm going to ask you, as the resident Washington Wizards specialist, do you think he plays today?
I think he plays. I actually, before the injury report came out, I didn't think Beal was going to play. But Beal's not on the injury report. Westbrook is. I'm guessing he plays. They're playing really well. They're actually, fighting for playoff seeding or play-in seeding, I guess. I'm assuming he plays. He played that entire game yesterday. Like, as far as I know, he didn't really get injured. So I don't really know why he's questionable, but I'm guessing he plays.
Several people on the strategy show had the gall to say that the Wizards would upset the Sixers if they met them in the first round, which is just a preposterous thought.
I mean, I think the Wizards are a dangerous out, but they're not going to be favored against anybody.
No, I was trying to set you up to take the opposite side of that.
Yeah.
I figured you might. Are they really that dangerous, though, against good defenses? I mean, they've just beat bad teams.
They've beaten some good teams this year.
I think they beat Golden State, and Curry shot like 1 for 100.
They beat Golden State. They did a good job against Curry. But, I mean, they beat Utah this year. They beat Brooklyn this year a couple of times.
Yeah, that's fair. I still think it would be massively long odds.
Yeah, they'd be underdogs, but they're going to have like when you have Beal, you have potentially the best player in any series.
Yeah, I guess slowing down Joel Embiid would be a monumental task that I'm not sure they'd be able to accomplish.
Yeah,
maybe we'll see it.
They'd be big dogs. It's just like a lot of like last year. What was it? Orlando was the 8 seed, and it was just like, okay, they have no chance against anybody because they don't have like any stars. Like the Wizards actually have a star plus a Westbrook.
Well, remember Orlando beat the piss out of Milwaukee in the first game, didn't they?
Yeah, Vooch with his wide open threes.
Yeah, and then they just got crushed and took the gentleman's sweep. But Bradley Beal's 1.54 DraftKings points per minute with Westbrook off the floor this year. I mean, those are fantastic numbers. It's elite 41% usage rate without Russell Westbrook. His assist rate jumps to 31%. All in all, if Russell Westbrook does happen to sit today, Bradley Beal becomes, one of the foremost elite options in terms of permanent production that you see on any slate.
Yeah, without a doubt. He's played 6 complete games without Westbrook this year, 37.8% usage rate, 1.56 DraftKings points per minute, 34.4% assist percentage. If Westbrook sits, just put Beal into your lineups and move on, because even though the pricing has started to come back up on Beal with him playing his normal minutes and playing better after dealing with that hip injury, he's not priced for Westbrook to be out. No,
someone's very impressed with your hairline because you always wear a hat. I get that too. Every time I don't wear a hat, everyone expects me to be straight bald.
Yeah, though really the reason I wasn't wearing a hat was this is the first real haircut I've had since I was in my 20s, which is crazy to say. But
I'll get my haircut and then I'll do one show without it and then straight back to the hat. It's just too much work.
Yeah, it's I had gotten my haircut like right before my 30th birthday and then didn't get it at all during like COVID stuff. So
how old are you?
31.
Oh, okay. Do you like anything else from Washington if Westbrook plays? And then let's just take him off the table afterwards and assume for a minute that he doesn't play. You'll have live before lock for that. We'll get that news. It's a 7 p.m. start, but it's always good to hit on everything here. If he does play, is there anything else you like with Rui back in the rotation? Raul Neto's price point being way up from where it was before. The rest of this team looks tough outside of Daniel Gafford, who's either 15 or 35 DraftKings points.
Yeah, I was going to say obligatory Daniel Gafford wins GPP mentions.
And he just did.
Yeah, but and especially on DraftKings, he's 3,900. He's 51 or 5,300 or something crazy on Fanduel. But there are a couple pieces of news that actually can affect him too. One of them is Westbrook. If Westbrook's out, I think you probably see more rebounds for Gafford, but I think you see the usage actually come down, or at least the efficiency come down, because he's not going to have Westbrook just throwing him lobs the entire game. But the other piece is that Robin Lopez is questionable today. If Lopez sits, it obviously takes one of those center options off the board for Scott Brooks, and maybe Scott Brooks gets Gafford more minutes again. He's played 26, 15, and 24 minutes over the last 3 games. So I do think he's got a really high ceiling on DraftKings at 3,900. Beyond that, there's nothing really that I see. Like Rui's price tag didn't come down enough. Bertans isn't really for me on this slate. So assuming Westbrook's in, it's pretty much just Westbrook with Beal and Gafford as secondary options.
Okay. And if Westbrook is out, aside from Beal, do we go hard on any of these guys?
I think it's tough because like Neto's priced up. So Neto would be okay. You assume that he'd be playing with the second unit when Beal, for the 12 minutes or so, Beal's not on the floor. He'd be okay, but he's priced up. Ish Smith, if he started, would be fine at 3,500. You'd probably see more minutes for him either way. So I guess that's a spot you could maybe roll the dice on in tournaments.
All right. I'm sorry for reading all the comments. There's just some really good ones about Adam today, and you have to kind of go. You got to roll with the punches. Adam looks like where'd that go? Ah, damn! I don't have time. Adam looks like a sea captain that needs a pipe and a parrot on his shoulder. There you go. That's a good one. Atlanta will have no Trae Young today. Jordan, actually, that news broke right after I did the run sheet. Not that one, but the Lou Williams news. So I'm including that in there. Lou Williams also out for this one. DeAndre Hunter as well. So they're facing Detroit. As of now, Dwayne Casey's playing all of these guys. Josh Jackson's questionable, but we'll find out if anything comes. I'm assuming they play. Usually he gives us that news earlier than right now. But you have no Trae and you have no Lou Williams now. We know that Bogdanovich will slot in and play minutes at the point, but how much does this help someone like Brandon Goodwin today?
I don't think it matters. So, I mean, it helps as far as like, I didn't think Goodwin was going to be in the rotation. Now I do. But Chris Dunn's probable. So I'm expecting that you get Dunn coming in and playing something like 18 or so minutes. And then you get Goodwin probably playing like 20 or so. We had, and that's assuming Goodwin comes off the bench. He started the second half yesterday, still didn't play a lot in the second half, but we've seen Atlanta going with their Bogdanovich, Herter, Hill, Collins, Capella lineup. So I don't think Williams being out makes a really big difference. I think it just sort of solidifies the playing time for Herter and for Bogdanovich. You get Goodwin probably playing another 18 to 20 minutes, but not enough to make him someone I want in DFS.
This team's getting virtually zero aggregate ownership right now.
Yeah, they're expensive. It is a decent matchup against Detroit. So they're a team that I don't mind taking some shots at in tournaments, sort of just as a contrarian piece, but I don't think there's anything that stands out as a priority. Like Clint Capella played 34 minutes last game. He clearly can, have a monster game here, but he's also expensive. Same goes for Bogdanovich, who without Young on the floor this year has a 23.5% usage rate, 20% assist percentage. He's playing huge minutes, but again, he's priced for that as well. So pretty efficiently priced team, I think.
Pirate ship my money. The problem is I read one comment and then they just start coming in hot. They'll never forget the time Josh came in with the hair, with like the emo haircut, and the entire show was just a shit on Josh fest, and I couldn't help myself.
I don't think I saw that one, but aren't most of them?
God, it was so good. Do you like anything from Detroit, given that most of them are healthy? Mason Plumlee is a stud when he gets the minutes, but it's just so possible that Casey's like, you played 21 minutes tonight, even though you played great yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of similar to Atlanta, where obviously there's nobody on Detroit that produces at their same rate as guys like Capella, but they're also not as expensive. Plumlee is the one that stood out to me because we know that risk is there where, Isaiah Stewart just can play more minutes than him any given game. But at the same time, he's played 32 and 29 minutes in his last 2 games. He's averaged 1.15 DraftKings points per minute this year in the games he's played without Griffin or Rose and with Grant. So the upside's there. And based on his ownership recently, it seems like people are acknowledging the fact that there's a very low floor, and they're just completely ignoring the fact that he's capable of posting some massive games if he does get the minutes. So, like I said earlier, very deep center position, but someone that would, I feel pretty confident I'd be getting into some Plumlee if I'm playing a lot of lineups tonight, because he does give you a really high ceiling at 5,600.
I think so too. I got a pack. I always get the bad packs. I always get
I'm like 48K, so I'll get one.
There you go. I'm 4,000. I always get the great number when I don't need it.
Just wasting it.
And whoever it was that I said I was sending that Vooch limited edition to on Friday, I thought I sent it, but I guess you have to hit like 18 confirmations. So I noticed today that I didn't. I resent it to you. You should be getting it. You should have gotten it already earlier today. Do you want to move on to the Lakers in Orlando?
Yeah, I'll just mention that Jeremy Grant and Corey Joseph, similar boat to Mason Plumlee.
So with the Lakers, Anthony Davis is probable. He had a limit of 15 minutes in his return after a 2+ month hiatus, played 17. And then he had a 25-minute limit, played 28. So the first question I'd ask you here, with the Lakers being huge favorites on the road for obvious reasons, 10.5 points total, or 10.5 point favorites against Orlando in a game with a 208.5 total. Believe it or not, it is not the lowest total on the slate. There is a team with a sub 100 implied total that we'll get to. Do you think Davis gets his 30 minutes today?
That's what I have him at, yeah.
Me too. Does it matter?
Not really. I think it would matter more if it were a smaller slate, because he is at a price point where in 30 minutes he easily can pay off 9,400. But this slate's just so big that outside of the largest field tournaments, I just don't really see the point in taking shots at Davis, especially because it's not like he's going to be popular. But I assume it's Anthony Davis. He still has that name value. People saw he played 28 minutes last game. You're not going to be the only person saying, oh, well, what if Anthony Davis has a big game? So it's kind of, if it were a smaller slate, I'd be more interested here.
Okay, fair enough. Dennis Schroeder's questionable. I'm assuming he plays, although usually everyone on the team is listed probable. Like, it's just pretty much the New England Patriots, but with probable.
Yeah, I mean, I think last time Schroeder was questionable, he went questionable, doubtful, starting lineup.
Yep, and played like 37 minutes.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to think. I'm just considering him in today. Everyone else on the injury report is probable. I didn't even list them on the run sheet for you guys to see because it's unnecessary. So just break down the rest of the Lakers. I definitely want to make sure we spend enough time on some of these games that are really, really going to be intensive from a analysis standpoint.
Yeah, I don't think there's a ton to see here. Like, Andre Drummond has played 30, 28, 31, and 30 minutes his last 4 games. He's struggled since coming to the Lakers, and Anthony Davis coming back shouldn't make that any better. But at the same time, we know the high rate that Drummond can rebound at. We know he's a relatively high usage guy. So he gives you a ceiling, but not someone that I think stands out as a priority at center. I am interested in Schroeder. I'm assuming the ownership's going to be low. It is a pretty stacked point guard position. But if you look at the numbers for him this year, when he's played with Davis on the floor and with James off, he's still produced over a fantasy point per minute. And then last game, at least, they staggered his minutes with Davis. So he was still getting about half of his minutes without Davis on the floor, and he's still playing big minutes. So I think Schroeder is someone where, again, there's better options as far as like guys that project a little bit better at that price range. But I think he might get slept on a little bit here because he's still produced at a high rate under these circumstances.
The Orlando side, how about our boy? Well, not our boy. I hardly knew who he was. Devin Kennedy with that open ankle, just brutal blood flowing. And when that happens, you know that the only real explanation is that there's a bone that has emerged from the skin.
Yeah, well, and you could also see the bone in his sock. So,
oh, could you? Did you zoom in?
No. I mean, you could just see it. Like what? It was one of those. Once you saw it, you were like, oh yeah, that's there.
I looked. I couldn't see anything definitive.
I mean, maybe I was just seeing things, but I'm pretty sure you could see like the little bulge in his sock from the bone.
Well, I mean, there's a couple explanations for that, but when you look at everyone and they go like this, they're about to come up to him to help him and they just turn their heads away and walk away. That's when you know something bad happened.
When Mo Bamba's taking his jersey off to put it over his leg.
It was brutal. Really brutal. He's out. Otto Porter's still out. Terrence Ross, James Ennis are questionable. It's a nasty matchup against the LA Lakers. Orlando playing their second of a back-to-back for whatever that's even worth at this point. They're just a dreadful basketball team, Adam. And I don't really know if there's any silver lining here. They have a sub 100 total along with one other team that we'll get to. What do you do with them?
There's nothing that stands out here. I mean, if for whatever reason you're insisting on playing somebody from Orlando, Cole Anthony, Chuma Okeke at 4,900, even Mo Bamba, if we get word that Wendell Carter is limited again today, these are guys that at their price points, like you could see them have a good game. But on this slate, there are guys that really stand out. And then there's guys like Schroeder who, we talked about on the other side where it's like, they're not the best, but I can see, pretty easily how they end up being one of the, end up as one of the better plays. And then there's like Orlando where it's just like, they're going to be low owned for a reason. There are some guys that you could see them have a good game, but there's 11 games on the slate. There's going to be an insane amount of value. There's an insane amount of good plays. I'm not going to start, talking up a bunch of guys on this team.
Okay. Then let's keep it going here. We're making good time. Soul Dope with the super chat says, Adam looks like the pirate from the Dodgeball movie. I almost didn't read this because his name is Steve the Pirate, and you should know that. And it's a Dodgeball and Underdog story. It's one of the most underrated comedies out there. I mean, you're familiar with this, right?
Yes, I've seen it, yeah.
With Vince Vaughn and...
Yeah. And Ben Stiller, yeah.
One of the more quotable movies out there, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can't quote any movie to save my life, but...
Really?
I am awful at movie quotes.
Not even like Dumb and Dumber?
No.
Wow. Okay. Gene B. Kim says, this is the day I realized Adam had hair. You've gone hatless plenty of times.
I don't wear hats that often, except for last year when I couldn't get the only haircuts I could get were when I did it myself, and I wasn't going to let anyone see that.
Yeah. OKC in Philadelphia. Oklahoma City Thunder, 12.5-point dogs, 219 total. Lou Dort's out. Man, that was the one guy that maybe could have kept this game remotely competitive through three quarters. Tony Bradley, questionable. Svi Mikhailiuk is getting ownership, which is a little bit concerning to me when he's projected to be owned by more than a quarter of the field today against a good, looking like it's good. I think most of these Sixers play. Just my personal opinion. They lost 4 games straight. If they're healthy enough, they play. Joel Embiid was in the starting lineup, was a late scratch. I think that was precautionary more so than anything. My assumption is that most of the important players are active and the Thunder get their doors blown off tonight.
That's my assumption as well. Still, like 3,600 for Svi on DraftKings. He played 36 minutes in his last start. He's averaged 28 minutes per game in the games that he has started this year without Gilgeous-Alexander and Dort. So he projects as a good point per dollar option. It's just like he's someone where right now, where we're assuming all these questionable players on all these teams are in, he's going to get a lot of ownership. As guys start getting ruled out and you start getting better value than Svi Mikhailiuk, his ownership is obviously going to come down. But still, close to min salary for a guy that averages about 0.8 DraftKings points per minute and is likely to play around 28 to 30 minutes is still a pretty good value. Fanduel, it's a little bit tougher to get there, which is weird because he was minimum salary for like a month when he shouldn't have been. But now he's up to 4,500, which doesn't look as nice. It is a tough matchup, like you said.
Really is. And I think just all in all, if you're trying to find value on this OKC team, you're going to look to Mikhailiuk. I get that. But aside from that, where do you turn? Do you go to a cheap Ty Jerome or a Kenrich Williams? I mean, you're really just grasping at straws at that point.
I have some interest in Isaiah Roby, especially on FanDuel at 4,100. We've seen, it seems like the Moses Brown experiment is ending. He got his contract and things just went south from there. He played 6 minutes last game, picked up 4 fouls, didn't even play in the second half. They started Tony Bradley. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. Like if Tony Bradley starts, that becomes a reasonable value option, even though he will have his hands full if he's starting against Embiid. But Isaiah Roby coming off the bench has played 28 or played like 29 and 30 minutes the last 2 games.
28 and 29, yeah. Yeah,
28 and 29. He's a 0.9 DraftKings point per minute guy this year. The matchup's not good, but 4,100, if you expect him to continue getting increased playing time, that's the spot where he's a decent value, at least until better stuff opens up.
Okay. Someone said 11-game slates are brutal. They are. That's why we're not going to try and drive you insane by talking about every player from every game. It's not worthwhile, and it does no service to you whatsoever. So let's talk about the Philadelphia 76ers. So Ben Simmons went from out to questionable to probable, but Embiid, Harris, Green, and Korkmaz are all questionable. I think for all intents and purposes, you're going to have a healthy Sixers team. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Embiid sits. Maybe Harris is out again. Maybe they think they can win this game easily and get Embiid more rest with his shoulder. That's definitely possible, given how bad this OKC team is. But they're still 12.5-point favorites at home, Adam.
Yeah, I'll say what you said is because I'm with you as far as it seems like they're going to play their guys, or I would expect most of these guys to play. The one angle I can see is just that they're playing Oklahoma City. So, what's the point? But assuming these guys are in, Ben Simmons, I think 7,400 on FanDuel, 7,900 on DraftKings. He's fine. Harris, if everyone is in, I think looks fine, especially I think more valuable on FanDuel at 7,200 because the power forward position is actually kind of difficult to fill out right now. And Harris, gives you a really high ceiling in addition to a strong medium projection at that salary. Embiid, though, is clearly the guy you're going to turn to. I mean, Oklahoma City has no answer for him in this front court. On DraftKings, his salary is down to 10,200. So you're getting a little bit of a gap between him and Jokic. There's a $700 gap on FanDuel as well, even though he's 10-7. He's averaged 1.65 DraftKings points per minute this year when Harris and Simmons are both in. If you take Harris out, it's like 1.85 DraftKings points per minute. So it's either a great play, it's either a really good play or a great play, depending on Harris's status. But Embiid, I think, clearly standing out as one of the top options, assuming he's able to play.
Anybody else here stand out to you?
Not if we assume the guys are in. Like if we assume everyone's in, it's Embiid, take a step back, Harris and Simmons, and then I don't really see anything. If guys start getting ruled out, then, obviously it changes, but it's really hard to get into that right now since there's like 6 questionable guys and a variety of iterations of who could be in or out.
Yeah, well, speaking of a laundry list of injuries, the Cleveland Cavaliers have no Colin Sexton. Larry Nance ended up coming out of yesterday's game with a fractured right thumb. Isaiah Hartenstein, who didn't play a lot of minutes, is out. Even Matthew Dellavedova is out. So Darius Garland had a really solid game. He's played remarkably well lately. Jared Allen yesterday dropped 55 fantasy points with a 27 and 12 double-double and 5 stocks. So he comes into this one against Toronto with a pretty decent ceiling. And then you have Kevin Love. So how could I forget Cedi Osman, who was a DNP-CD for like the past several weeks. And then JB Bickerstaff throws him in the starting lineup, gives him 37 minutes or whatever it was. So if he starts again tonight, which I assume he will, you're going to get another extended run from Cedi Osman.
Yeah, pretty scary spot because on the one hand, this is another team that has an implied total of like 101. But on the other hand, they're pretty shorthanded here. And it's not like Toronto has been a great team defensively. And Cleveland does actually have guys that produce at a pretty good rate, even though they're not a really exciting team. You look at Darius Garland, who played about 40 minutes yesterday. He has a 26.5% usage rate, 34% assist percentage without Drummond or Sexton on the floor. I'm assuming you're getting another 38 to 40 minutes from him tonight, if the game's competitive. Jared Allen played 34 minutes last night. Now you just took 2 pieces of that front court out with Hartenstein and Nance. And then, who knows if Kevin Love is limited or not on the second half of a back-to-back. So I'm assuming you get another 33, 34 minutes from Jared Allen, who has produced at a high rate this year. At 7K on DraftKings, it's, I think, a perfectly fine play, but doesn't really stand out. 5,700 on FanDuel, though. I don't really know how they landed on that price tag, but it's pretty ridiculous. So really, really good play on FanDuel, I think. And then Cedi, who's the minimum salary on FanDuel, 3,800 on DraftKings. He's averaged about 0.8 DraftKings points per minute without Drummond or Sexton on the floor this year. 20.8% usage rate, 15.7% assist percentage. Even if you assume those rates come down a little bit, playing most of his minutes alongside Garland, he's still clearly underpriced for someone that played 37 minutes last night and then is now playing on a team that's missing Dellavedova, missing Stevens, missing Hartenstein, and missing Nance for a guy like Cedi Osman that can play multiple positions.
The only thing is we have him projected at 60% on DraftKings right now.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you get someone like Cedi Osman on an 11-game slate with that kind of ownership, you can always make a case to just play other guys and hope that he doesn't kill you. But it is, I think, very clearly one of or the best value on the slate right now. And you do still have so many other ways that you can make contrarian plays. So I think it is, it's fine if you just find alternatives and don't play Cedi. But I think it would also be a mistake to just look and say, oh, Chedi's 60, can't play him because
you still have a bunch of other ways. Dead minimum on FanDuel too.
Yeah, at small forward, which is a pretty weak position.
Right, 55% projected ownership there using the Awesemo ownership projections. It's crazy. I do wonder though, just to nail this down a little bit further, with their price points north of 7K now, Jared Allen and Darius Garland, and Kevin Love potentially being limited on a second of a back-to-back. Do you look at these guys as just straight secondary options today, and Cedi Osman is the clear best? I mean, we know he's the clear best play from Cleveland, but is everyone else just a secondary option, but a decent one at that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could put it that way. Like, Garland played so many minutes yesterday, and we know that their guards, him and Sexton play a ton of minutes. So when Sexton goes down, you expect 38 to 40 from Garland. He's not that expensive given that he's going to play 38 to 40 minutes most likely. He's a fantasy point per minute guy. It's just, you still have to compare him to, for example, in that price range, DeJounte Murray against the Wizards, Conley and Clarkson against the Timberwolves. I think Garland's a very good play. I think Allen's probably, I really like Allen, but I think he's going to be the most difficult to get to out of that trio just because you have fewer center positions to do it at.
Oh, Anger's back in multi-accounting. Jordan, you were right. You were right. I doubted you, but you were right. I think you nailed it, son. Nice work. Talking about the Toronto Raptors on the other side, Chris Boucher is out. Gary Trent Jr. is out as well. You put it well. Toronto has not been a stellar defense. As a matter of fact, they've just not been a good team this season. Do you like anybody from this Toronto squad against the Cleveland side in what should be another one of these games that is not exactly a high-scoring, fast-paced game? 212 total. Toronto 11.5-point favorites against the Cavs team playing their second of a back-to-back.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit more interested in the Toronto side now than I was when I wrote the deep dive. Just kind of adjusting their baselines and realizing how many minutes these guys played last game. You got 40 minutes from Siakam, you got 40 minutes from Van Vliet. I think Anunoby was at 39 or 40. So if this game's competitive, you're probably getting at least 37 or 38 minutes from those main guys. Lowry should be at 36 or 37 as well. None of them stand out as priorities, but I would not be surprised if a lot of my lineups just end up having one of these main, really three pieces with Siakam, Van Vliet, Lowry, to a lesser extent Anunoby or Birch. But you don't have Gary Trent today, so that takes more minutes out. It's just a spot. You talk about it a lot. Nick Nurse typically does not go very deep into his bench when he's shorthanded. He just gives even more minutes to the guys.
40 minutes to all his starters, yeah.
Right, yeah. So it's a spot where I think the pricing is pretty close to efficient. It's not like the Raptors are cheap here, but 38 minutes is 38 minutes, and it's not like these are bad fantasy producers. So they're definitely guys that I think are going to just sort of fit in as sort of like the raw points pieces where you get the value in your lineup and then you end up with $8,900 and it's just yeah, sure, I'll play Pascal Siakam.
Ben Simmons, basically everyone from Philly is a game time decision.
Wonderful.
Now, did we just have Ross and Ennis ruled out, I think so?
Yeah, Ross and Ennis both out.
Does that do anything additionally for you? I know Orlando's bad. It's a tough matchup. Is there anything that pops up?
No, it's what we've been getting. Kind of the same thing. Is there a decent chance someone from Orlando has a good game? Yeah, my guess would be that it's either Cole Anthony, Chuma Okeke, or Mo Bamba. But when you consider the probabilities of that versus all the other spots on the slate, there's nothing that really stands out.
Anything else for Toronto before we move on?
Nope.
All right. Hey, we got free content, free premium content on the site today. We try and give everybody who isn't a premium sub a taste of what we're doing over at Awesemo. NBA player projections are free, MLB ownership projections, and NHL player projections. Adam, your deep dive, also up on the site on the homepage. That is free, and that has been posted already, I would assume.
Yeah, it has.
How fun was that today?
Well, it actually wasn't bad because we didn't get a lot of news, so I was just,
right. Yeah, well, it's the best free piece of content you're going to find out there for a daily plays article. So check it out on the homepage.
Here's a Pistons tweet that, it kind of just goes to what we said about the Pistons. No matter what you do, it's going to be risky. But Dwayne Casey said he'd like to go with more 3-guard lineups and play more zone with 3 weeks left in the season. Also wants to get Sekou Doumbouya and Tyler Cook more minutes and Dennis Smith Jr. back on the court. I don't know what to take from that, except for I had expected Doumbouya and Cook, neither one, to play a single minute tonight. So if that starts tonight, it's just screwing things up even more as far as the rotation goes.
Okay. Yeah, it's a spot that I have no problem just kind of ignoring. What about the Phoenix Suns and Torrey Craig, who the Suns on this extended road trip, 215.5 total. They are 2.5-point favorites here against the Knicks, who are playing quite well. Jay Crowder's out. Dario Saric is out. Torrey Craig, who has small forward shooting guard eligibility on DraftKings, played 32 minutes last time out, 14 rebounds, and has actually rebounded relatively well in recent games where he's got an extended run. Do you agree with the ownership on him today?
What's he at?
22% on DraftKings.
It's another one of those spots where I think it decreases by the time we get to lock. I don't feel great about it because it's a weird situation because for one, the matchup, all that's pretty unappealing against the Knicks. But for two, we have such a long track record of Torrey Craig not being a very productive fantasy option. But then this year, he's played 20 games with Booker and Chris Paul both active. He's averaged 0.97 DraftKings points per minute, has a 15.8% rebounding percentage, which is what you were just alluding to. So, and probably plays big minutes tonight at least mid to upper 20s at least, because you have Crowder out again. You have Dario Saric out. So I understand why he's getting the ownership. I think that there's a pretty good chance he pays off 3,500. I just also think he's risky because there's still ways that this can go sideways for him. Like Javon Carter could play more minutes. Frank Kaminsky could play more minutes. Jalen Smith could get in the rotation and push Kaminsky to the 4. There's just ways that, Torrey Craig can also just revert to being Torrey Craig. So there's a lot of ways it goes sideways, but he is cheap enough where at least right now we still don't have a lot of dirt cheap value. If Torrey Craig ends up being a value piece in some lineups, as long as you're getting to the good options, as long as it's getting you Westbrook or Jokic or Doncic or whoever, Embiid, it's fine. It's just, understand that you are still talking about Torrey Craig.
Russell Westbrook's in, Robin Lopez out.
Daniel Gafford.
Yeah, I mean, those extra 10 to 12 minutes, if they all go to Gafford, it's going to be really tough not to like him at that price.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, there's no guarantee that you get 48 minutes now from Gafford and Len, especially with Rui back. But at the same time, Brooks has his center rotation as far as the players go has been very inconsistent. But he's played centers 48 minutes for most of the season. He hasn't really played a lot of small ball lineups. So I think there's a pretty good chance you get maybe 18 to 20 minutes for Len now and 24 for Gafford. 24 to 26 for Gafford, and then Rui picks up the rest.
Do you like anything else from Phoenix today? Because Craig is the one hauling in quite a bit of ownership. You just broke it down pretty nicely there. Most days we aren't talking a whole lot about Phoenix. Cameron Johnson's getting some ownership, but really he is a 0.8 DraftKings point per minute guy who you need the minutes from him. Sorry, picking up ownership. You need the minutes from him. DeAndre Ayton, Chris Paul getting a little bit here. But it is a Knicks team that while they might be playing up in pace a little bit recently, they're still a good defense. They still play slower than the large majority of the league. It just doesn't feel like the most enticing spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the spots where there's something worth mentioning, because everybody knows Chris Paul's Chris Paul, Devin Booker's Devin Booker. There's nothing that really makes them more or less appealing today than normal, I don't think. But Cameron Johnson has played 33 and 34 minutes the last 2 games. He's only averaged 0.6 DraftKings points per minute as a starter this year, but he's also shot a lot worse from 3 in those games. So even if you do see him drop back from 0.8 fantasy points per minute, I think it's more likely you end up around 0.7, and he's cheap enough where there is some value there if you're getting another 33 to 34 minutes. And then with Ayton, I think it's worth mentioning that Saric is out. He's averaged about 33 minutes per game without Saric this year. He's averaged 29.5 minutes per game in the games that Saric has played. So still not a priority here, but I do think DeAndre Ayton projects better with Saric out than he would if Saric were in.
Fair enough. No team allowing a lower 3-point percentage to opponents than the Knicks this year. So, he can get there, but I do worry about Cameron Johnson just not having enough to get it done today.
For sure.
What about the Knicks?
Yeah, sort of similar where, I mean, this game overall is not that appealing. Phoenix has dropped off a bit defensively lately, and they play at a faster pace than the Knicks, but they've been one of the less appealing DFS matchups this year. Julius Randle's always someone that you can feel good about it if he ends up in your lineup, leading the league in minutes per game over the last month, up around 38 plus minutes per game, 1.3 DraftKings points per minute. Nothing really to dislike there. RJ Barrett on Fanduel in particular, where you do have to roster 2 small forwards, is kind of interesting to me because Alec Burks is still out. Barrett has averaged 38.1 minutes per game without Burks this year. He's averaged 33 minutes per game when Burks has played. So you're seeing not an uptick in per minute production, which has been about the same 0.9 fantasy points per minute, but you're seeing a huge uptick in playing time for him because Tom Thibodeau is another one like Nick Nurse that is just going to give more minutes to his starters in this situation. So Barrett at 6K on Fanduel, I think makes some sense. And then Derrick Rose on DraftKings, only 5,200, coming off a game where he played 33 minutes. He's averaged just shy of 30 minutes per game in the games without Burks. So this is someone, he's a fantasy point per minute player that's likely to play around 30 minutes tonight. So I think there's some value, some upside there on Rose.
The Chicago-Miami game begins to get really ugly. I mean, there are going to be certain games on this slate that we very simply do not need to spend a ton of time on. The Bulls have a 99.8 or 75 implied total last I looked. The game has a 206 total for this one. All in all, it's really ugly. Such a slow-paced game. Levine is still out. Is there anything? Vooch is $10,300 on DraftKings. I just don't know how we get to the Chicago Bulls tonight and feel even remotely decent about it, unless you've got some diamond in the rough here that I'm completely missing, and I'm all ears if you do have something.
I do not. I have nothing from the Bulls.
Okay. That was simple. What about Miami?
Very little there, too. Butler and Bam, certainly guys you feel good about it if you get to them, but either one stands out. Butler, though, on FanDuel, I think is going to be the most appealing spot from this game is Butler on FanDuel at 9,300 because, again, the small forward position just doesn't leave you a ton that you feel good about. Butler's averaging, 1.3 fantasy points per minute or so in the games he's played without a bio this year. So Butler, if you get there on FanDuel, I think it makes a lot of sense.
All right. Is that all you got from this game?
Yeah, it's one of the ugliest games on the slate.
All right. Well, we got plenty of time left for these 4 games, and we're going to need to spend some time on them. So the Clippers and the New Orleans Pelicans might not be as much for this one. Clippers laying 1.5 on the road, 228.5 total. No Kawhi Leonard, no Luke Kennard, no Serge Ibaka, and then Rajon Rondo is questionable. Paul George has been really spectacular of late. I mean, you could really make the argument that he should be more expensive than a lot of guys who are priced above him right now. I mean, would you rather have him at 96 or Vucevic at 10.3? Even Zion at 10.1 or Randall at 9.9. It just feels like Paul George, even at 9.6, despite the fact that he was, 8,700, 8,400, 82, down to 8,100 only 8 games ago. Without Kawhi Leonard on the floor, this team does not have an alpha outside of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. So you take him off the court, and Paul George has been dominant, not only with high usage at him, but the fact that he has been more than efficient, both from the field and from beyond the arc, getting to the free throw line at a decent enough clip, rebounding well, dishing out enough assists, averaging 2 steals a game. I could go on and on about how well he has played. And now he faces a New Orleans team that plays, at a relatively fast pace and defensively hasn't been known to really slow anyone down all season long.
Yeah, I mean, George, the thing is, you mentioned that the increase in price and that he's still probably underpriced with Kawhi out. He's sort of been underpriced all year. Like sure. He's produced at a very similar rate to Kawhi in the games that they've played together. So it was normally like, George looks good. Kawhi doesn't look that great. And so seeing that big of an increase, it doesn't really mean as much when you consider that the starting point was underpriced. He's averaged 1.43 DraftKings points per minute in 9 games without Kawhi this year, has a 38.4% usage rate. If you go back to the start of last year, he's played 20 total games without Kawhi. He has a 36.5% usage rate. He's averaged 1.45 DraftKings points per minute. So you're getting, going back to last year, basically the same production that you've gotten this year, just shy of, 1.5 fantasy points per minute. He should play 35, 36 minutes here. It's not a bad matchup, like you said, against New Orleans. I think George looks great, especially now that, we got the news that Westbrook is in, so you don't have Bradley Beal surpassing him at that price point and position. I think George is one of the best shooting guard options on the slate, and I think that's, pretty obvious to say.
I would think so as well. The price just doesn't add up when you see what he's done and it's not a bad idea sometimes to look what players are priced at around him. You know what I mean? And see what they've been doing to see, is he underpriced or is everyone underpriced? You know what I mean? And I think in this case, everyone is not underpriced.
Yeah, exactly. When I wrote you used, I think, Randall and Zion as examples. Like when I wrote the deep dive today and there's
and Vooch at 10.3.
What'd you say?
I said, and Vucevic at 10,300. I used as an example.
Well, I didn't even mention Vooch, but I mentioned Randall and I mentioned Zion, and it was kind of just I don't like the price. The price is where it should be, but I like the players, and if you get there, it's good. George, it was just I want Paul George in my lineups.
Right? Yeah, simple enough. If you're getting 25 plus field goal attempts against the Pels in a 230 total game almost, it's really tough not to like him. And plus, the only other thing I'll say on this is, with that, you have no Kawhi and no, Kennard. Sure, it's not a big deal. Ibaka, not a huge deal, but Ibaka is the 3rd highest usage player behind Kawhi and Paul George when he's healthy. Now that Lou Williams is gone, really, who else on this team do you look at and say, well, if Paul George has a bad game, it might be because the shot volume isn't there. It might be because the usage isn't there, because they can siphon off enough usage from him. Who in the world could you say that about on this team? Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris at best?
Right. And I mean, like you mentioned Kennard, and even that, when you think like Kennard's minutes are being replaced by Terrence Mann and Nick Batum, who are even lower usage guys than Kennard. So, like,
Batum's afraid to shoot.
Right. Morris is going to get some shots up. Jackson will get his. Zubats, is a 18 to 18-ish% usage guy. But like, there's nobody out there taking the ball away from Paul George.
No, not at all. Luka probable. Kristaps Porzingis doubtful. We'll get
Josh Jackson out.
What's that?
And Josh Jackson out.
Okay, thanks. And Jordan, I'm gonna when Adam starts talking, I'm gonna start making adjustments to these later games. So if you have to fix those up, Josh Richardson is doubtful as well. That game is the last on the slate. Looks like we'll have plenty of time to hit on it. Outside of Paul George, though, given all of these injuries, do we look towards anyone that could slot in as a solid option today against the Pels?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's nobody on the Clippers that, to me, looks as underpriced as George does, but there are still guys that give you a very high ceiling because of Kawhi being out. Marcus Morris averaging about 30 minutes per game in his 5 starts without Kawhi and with George, 1 fantasy point per minute. If this game's competitive, I assume you get closer to 32 minutes or so from Morris. Reggie Jackson's averaging about 32 minutes per game in his starts. He is just shy of a fantasy point per minute guy as well. Neither of them, they're priced up enough where they're pretty much correctly priced for their median projection. But like you were just saying, outside of Paul George, someone else on this team has to take shots. Mm-hmm. And Morris and Jackson are going to be options 2 and 3. So they certainly have potential here, especially like if it's a lineup where you don't have Paul George, it makes sense to really consider these guys because it kind of just like makes your path a little bit easier because you're saying, okay, like I don't have Paul George. So ideally this would be a game where the Clippers points, Paul George has an unusually bad game. The Clippers are still going to score. So that probably means Morris or Jackson have an unusually good game. So it kind of makes some sense there. Zubats, again, center's loaded, but he's averaged about 28 minutes per game. I think you could see a little bit more playing time from him here because for one, the Pelicans have a traditional center in Steven Adams, but for two, they have Zion who looks to just score at the rim constantly. We've seen in some games where the Clippers really are prioritizing rim protection that they give Zubats more minutes. So it wouldn't surprise me if you got a couple more minutes from Zubats, but still a pretty risky option. And then Terrence Mann played about 37 minutes in the starting lineup last game. I think you get a lot of minutes from him again. He is a pretty good rebounder for a guard. The problem is he's a very low usage guy. He's only averaged about 0.6 DraftKings points per minute in his starts with George this year. So certainly not someone that you're excited about his average production. But if you are going to get 34 to 36 minutes or so from Mann, there is at least a path to success here.
No minute limit for Anthony Davis today. Change your opinion on anything?
Yeah, a little bit. I'll be really interested where the ownership comes in because I think if you give Anthony Davis 32 or 33 minutes, he looks like a really good play at 9,400. There's still obviously the risk that the game just isn't competitive and he doesn't play his full minutes. But I think, and there's also the risk that Frank Vogel's just lying and he plays 30 minutes. So I'm interested to see where our ownership projections end up because if it ends up, Anthony Davis is one of the highest owned guys on the slate, I'm still kind of okay just taking my chances and hoping that either the game blows out or Frank Vogel's a liar. If he goes from like 2% to 6% or something, and there's a chance that I'm getting 34 minutes of Anthony Davis at 9,400 without LeBron James against the Magic, then I'm very, very interested.
Since the start of last season, Anthony Davis, and for over-under, I know you like to troll, but jumping around on this slate because we haven't had this much news all season long. It's just what we got to do. Stay focused. You'll get there. 1.49 DraftKings points per minute in 1,157 minutes without LeBron since the start of last season. I'm not going through the trouble of taking anyone else off the floor. LeBron, to me, is really the only one that matters enough. Usage rate for Anthony Davis is 33.8%. And he's rebounding at, I'm assuming, a strong enough clip here. Where's he at? 15.3%. So that's over 1,100 minutes without LeBron since the start of last season. Those are good numbers.
Yeah, they are. I think Davis is a good play. It's just definitely just keep in mind, like don't read that as Anthony Davis is guaranteed to play 38 minutes tonight. Like
good point. Yeah.
There are still ways that this goes wrong, whether it's blowouts, whether it's Frank Vogel just doesn't do what he, doesn't mean that he can play 38 minutes. He means he can play 33. Davis, though, I think is he's underpriced, I think, and there is clearly a very high ceiling with that uncertainty. Like the fact that he's not on a minutes limit means he could play 36 minutes at 9,400 and just be a great play.
I agree. And I mentioned to Josh today on the strategy show, Monday through Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern, every single day of the week. Check it out. It's a great time. That if this game does get out of control, and it's very possible that it does, against arguably the worst team alongside Oklahoma City in the Orlando Magic, it's very, very possible that Davis doesn't see any playing time over the last 18 minutes of the game.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just kind of, again, there's still downside risk here. But now there's more upside than there was if he were on a 30-minute limit.
Oh, I'm not denying that at all. All I'm saying is there's risk.
Yeah. I'm kind of just more trying to get across that, I'm not trying to talk people off of Anthony Davis. I just am trying to remind people that there is still downside here, even with that news.
Right. And that no minutes limit doesn't mean 40 minutes. Yeah.
Right. It could, but it doesn't have to.
Is New Orleans going essentially neck and neck as the worst team to target on this slate alongside Chicago?
I don't think they're that bad, but they're pretty damn close. The only reason they're not that bad is they have Zion. And
guess what the highest owned projected player on DraftKings is right now for New Orleans?
6% for Zion.
2% for Lonzo.
Yeah. So, and also Brandon Ingram on Fanduel, I think is fine at 8,100. But yeah, it's a pretty brutal spot here because the Clippers they shouldn't be as good defensively without Beverly, without Kawhi, but still not a great matchup. And then the pricing is just not that good. Zion is priced where he should be, as good as he's been, and we've seen the improvements as the year's gone on. He's just priced where he should be. Ingram on DraftKings is priced where he should be. On FanDuel, maybe there's a little bit of value. And I don't really see anything else there.
All right. Can we get these thumbs up a little bit higher? We got 2,000 people watching, 261 likes. I feel like the last month, everyone's just decided we don't need to like the video. Who cares? But it helps us a ton. I swear I wouldn't just be saying that and sounding like a broken record. If you hit the thumbs up and subscribe, it does a lot for us. We can keep the lights on here and keep putting out free content every day. Thank you in advance. Anything else from this game on either side, or you want to move on to Utah, Minnesota?
We can move on to Utah and Minnesota. Tony Bradley was ruled out for Oklahoma City.
Yeah, that is another one. And so Josh Engleman says Anthony Davis is better than 99% of the league. Better than Russell Westbrook, Josh? Who would you take, Anthony Davis or Russell Westbrook?
Talking to me?
I'm kidding. I mean, it's a very obvious answer.
Yeah, I mean, only one of them's averaging a triple-double this year.
That was solid. Utah Jazz, no Donovan Mitchell in this one. He remains out. They're facing Minnesota, another game with yet a huge double-digit spread, 10-point favorites, 227 total. They're healthy outside of Donovan Mitchell. Jordan Clarkson's price has come up as a result of Mitchell's absence. And as a result, his production has been up. His ownership earlier in the day was high, but now it's come back down to what seems like a far more palatable spot. It doesn't seem like there's any priorities from Utah today. I can make a couple arguments for one or two of these guys, but based on price points really reflecting accurately what type of production we should expect from them, I wouldn't say there's any priorities on Utah, at least not on DraftKings.
I think I'm a little bit higher on Conley than you.
Okay.
I really like Conley. So I agree. Clarkson's price is kind of weird on DraftKings. I think Clarkson's fine at 6,800, but he's too close to Conley in my opinion. On FanDuel at 6K, Clarkson looks better, but Conley to me is the one that really stands out because for one, we know it's a really good matchup against Minnesota. If we assume this game stays close enough that you're getting full minutes, you're probably getting 32 minutes or so from Conley. But we've seen increased production from him without. With Mitchell sidelined. And the big reason is that half of his minutes are going to come with Clarkson also on the bench. And when he's played, most of his minutes without Mitchell on the floor this year have been alongside Clarkson. When he's played without Clarkson, he has a 30% usage rate, a 47% assist percentage. He's averaging 1.33 DraftKings points per minute. You've seen similar production from him in the games without Mitchell. So I think Conley is still just a completely different fantasy player with Mitchell out because of the way that the rotations for the Jazz change. So I still really like Conley. I like Ingles, especially on FanDuel where you have to roster small forwards. You're expecting 32, 33 minutes of a fantasy point per minute or so from Ingles. So I think he looks fine there. And then I'm interested in Gobert also because, again, center's stacked today, but This is another guy where, I mentioned it with Zubats in his matchup. I think you could see a couple minutes more than average for Gobert if this game's close. You saw about 36 minutes for him last game against Minnesota, and it just makes sense that they would want him on the floor for most of Karl-Anthony Towns' minutes. Towns averages 35 to 37 minutes per game. Gobert for the season's around 32. Part of that is because Utah is involved in so many blowouts, but part of it is also just that typically they don't really prioritize getting him on the floor for that many minutes. But I think you could see that again tonight against Towns. So if I am going to mid-range centers, which kind of depends on how much value opens up on the slate. But if I am going there, I think Gobert does really stand out as a 1.3 DraftKings point per minute guy who on average is playing around 32 minutes, but could easily give you 34, 35 minutes here.
Okay, fair enough. Now, the thing that I have, the issue I have with Jordan Clarkson is not that I don't think he's a good player. I do. I think he's having a great season. He's played an integral role on the success of this Jazz team. 1.16 fantasy point per minute producer with Mitchell off the floor this year. But it's more likely than not, Adam, that he only plays 27, 28 minutes again. And does he benefit from a usage perspective without Mitchell? Undoubtedly, sure. But he already plays a lot of his minutes without Mitchell anyway off the bench. He's not a starter. So you have to at least look at that and say, well, he's probably playing half of his minutes without Mitchell to begin with. So sure, he benefits, but he's not benefiting with all of his minutes that coming without Mitchell when usually half of them come without him already. And then he's not getting legitimate starter minutes on a consistent basis because Mitchell's out either. So I think there are drawbacks to paying almost $7K for a Jordan Clarkson when you're talking about someone that could very easily give you 1.16, 1.2 DraftKings points per minute and still finish with only like 35.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thing too. Like on DraftKings, he still has upside there because he can just light it up here. But the thing with him too, like when you compare him to Conley, is Conley gets a massive bump in assist percentage when he's playing when he's playing these minutes without Mitchell, without Clarkson, and just in general, he's a high assist guy. So he's giving you those peripherals. Jordan Clarkson is just shooting the ball a few more times, without Mitchell. His assist percentage is still like 10% in the games he's played without Mitchell. He's not going out there and picking up peripherals. So you're getting a higher ceiling from Clarkson because the usage does go up and because there's just one less mouth to take the ball away from him if he's shooting well. But you're still getting around 30 minutes. You're still getting a scoring dependent player. So that's why I think like on DraftKings, he's too closely priced to Conley. On Fanduel, I'm a lot more interested because you're getting around 30 minutes of Clarkson at only 6K, which is a lot more palatable, I think.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Last thing I'll say on Clarkson, if you've been watching Awesemo, you've heard us say this all the time. No one gets hurt more by blowouts than six men because they can lose almost a full rotation, Adam. So I'm not projecting for a blowout, but if this game does blow out, Jordan Clarkson's minutes are probably limited as a result.
Sure, yeah.
Anything for Minnesota that you like?
Not a ton. I think that D'Angelo Russell deserves a mention because his playing time's increasing and his salary's not. This is obviously a tough matchup against Utah, but Russell in 9 games this year without Beasley and with Towns has averaged 1.3 DraftKings points per minute. Overall, in 13 games played with Towns, he's averaged 1.2 DraftKings points per minute. He's getting around 30 minutes per game now. You could potentially see even a couple more minutes tonight. He's 6,300 on FanDuel, 6,400 on DraftKings. There's no doubt that he has a very high ceiling at that price point, even in a tough matchup against Utah. So I think Russell, at least deserves a mention. And then I think that Towns is incredibly difficult to get to on DraftKings at 10-7, but at 9,700 on FanDuel, that's at least mildly appealing in tournaments. Of course, the opportunity cost is still through the roof because you can only roster one center, but at least there you're getting him $1,000 less than Embiid and like $1,700 or whatever dollars less than Jokic. Whereas on DraftKings, he's the same price as these guys. He's more expensive than Embiid.
Kevin S., you're going to need to start super chatting more than $2 to get me to read this shit going forward, man. He says Zion and Cedi or Jokic and Mike ROTCH. So Mike Crotch. Yeah. Go with Zion and Cedi there, but thanks. You got $2 just to read that nonsense. It's getting out of control. Jordan, we got 2 games to go. We got 15 minutes, plenty of time to go. We had a ridiculous influx of Hall of Fame tweets yesterday. I mean, just absurd all weekend long. Every time I pulled up Twitter, there was another one. $65,000 win, a bunch of 5-figure wins, 4-figure wins left and right. Throw that shit up on the screen, Jordan, and let's make this happen. If you want to be up here, join the Hall of Fame. Get your name broadcast all over the Awesemo Hall of Fame YouTube. Download the Awesemo profile pic at awesemo.com/avatar. Don't doctor it up. Don't do nothing wild with it. Just put it up so we know what it is. Tweet your wins at Awesemo Hall of Fame and win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum if you finish top 3 in any contest with 5,000 or more followers. That means, yes, that it could be the quarter arcade. It could be the nickel. We've been giving out subscriptions left and right to people that are taking top 3 positions in the nickel, in the quarter, and the dime, as long as there's more than 5,000. So this one, no Awesemo avatar, but we got to shout him out because he thanked the Awesemo DFS crew and the top fighter tools and projections. Hopefully you took advantage of that Awesemo promo for UFC for the month, half off. It's gone now. $64,000, first place. Boom. Dude, our MMA product has been absurd lately.
Yeah.
Like just outrageously good. Steve Buzzard took another top 3. Was that the final? Was that the championship or the final?
Probably not. No, because the final was just a 50-50 in round 1.
Oh, okay. Well, either way, he took 3rd again in that 48, like just crushing. B-Dog, how about our NASCAR tools? $2,000 to B-Dog 1924. Rams Angels down there in 5th place with another 300. We just keep this one moving. And all of these guys, honestly, you're looking at these, not all of these are high stakes at all, right? Some of them, he put $20, I think, in put 20 entries in the $20. Someone putting $1 or $10 in. Be Great 36 with the $1,151 shipped first place in the 20K NBA shot. Said Awesemo Hall of Fame, keeping it real. Josh Engleman, Laffy_D. Congrats to you. What else do we have? Do we have one more? I think we had 2 more, right? Because Alex pinked one yesterday. Yeah. 30K, King David, 187. He took first place with the Awesemo avatar. Talking baseball, first out of 29,000. And then our boy Alex Baker. The site's named after him for a reason. He built these tools. He uses these tools to win a ton of money. Find them at awesemo.com/join. First place, 15K up top in the MLB Grand Slam. It was an insane weekend for Awesemo, and I'm happy to throw all of your guys' names up there. A whole lot of fun. If you want to check out everything we have, go to awesemo.com/join. You could do weekly, monthly, annual for ownership projections, player projections, the boom bust tool, top stack, lineup builder, fantasy cruncher add-on, or check out the free premium content that we've got going on each day. Whatever you want to do, we got you covered. Congrats to everyone who had a huge weekend, especially rocking the Awesemo avatar and all of our premium subs. All right, let's do it. Memphis and Denver. The Memphis Grizzlies, everyone's healthy, which means how the hell do we target anyone from this team?
You probably don't. I mean, it's not a good spot against Denver. Denver hasn't played great defensively, but they don't play at a fast pace either. You have Memphis going into Denver. Guys are priced up. I mean, obviously guys like Valanciunas and Morant and Brooks have high ceilings, but this is a team that plays a pretty deep rotation when everyone's healthy. It's not a super appealing matchup. There's not a whole lot I have to say here other than like the guys that you know are really good have high ceilings, but are pretty far down the list for me tonight.
All right. Thank you, Brittany Talbot. Very nice of you to say that. Denver Nuggets. Jokic, Porter, who's been phenomenal at times lately, priced up for sure, but ownership's been very low on him. PJ Dozier coming off a huge game. He did, however, shoot, I think, 10 for 13 from the field. Yeah, 10 for 13 from the field. It's hard to replicate a game like that. Monty Morris is still out. Will Barton's going to be out for an extended period of time. Do we like this 228 total when it comes to Denver? We can start with Jokic, but I'm mainly talking about some other players outside of him that might sneak into lineups tonight. Yeah,
so I mean, Jokic, obviously, we like Jokic every slate. He's either the top or the second highest projected player, basically depending how you feel about Westbrook. Memphis has not been as strong defensively lately. They are a relatively fast-paced team, so it's a pace-up spot here. Jokic has averaged 1.75 DraftKings points per minute without Murray this year. There's nothing to dislike at all about Jokic. Once again, just one of the top plays on the slate. For the rest of the team, it starts to become pretty site dependent, I think, because prices on DraftKings are pretty expensive, whereas on FanDuel, they're cheaper. Michael Porter Jr., 8,500 on DraftKings. You saw the upside that he has last game. There's no denying that. He dropped in 39 actual points against the Rockets. While Memphis isn't a bad matchup, they're not the Rockets either. But on FanDuel, 7,400, I think a much more appealing price tag for Porter. The sort of value pieces here are kind of interesting because with Will Barton out, there's a lot of minutes to go around. PJ Dozier played 27.8 minutes and didn't close because it was garbage time last game. I think you can get 32, 33 minutes from Dozier, who's a 0.8 to 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy here. Only 4,600 on FanDuel, 5,200 on DraftKings is fine, but not as appealing. Campazzo, only 4,300 on FanDuel, 4,900 on DraftKings. Again, 4,900 is okay. 4,300 looks a lot better on FanDuel. Played 33 and a half minutes last game, and again, wasn't on the floor at the end of the game because of a blowout. One spot that I'm really, really interested in tournaments on DraftKings, though, is Austin Rivers is $3,900. And we all know Austin Rivers isn't very good, but he played 29 minutes last game. Granted, maybe he benefited a little bit from garbage time at the end where these guys weren't on the floor. But even let's say Rivers plays 25, 26 minutes tonight, that's not really different than the playing time that you're expecting for Torrey Craig, for example. And Austin Rivers isn't really any worse of a fantasy player over his career than Torrey Craig is either. So, like, for example, if you're getting 20 to 25% ownership on Torrey Craig, and then for $400 more, you're getting 2% ownership right now on Austin Rivers on DraftKings, that's a spot where I think you could look to pivot. Although I think one reason you are seeing more ownership for Craig is that he's guard and forward eligible, whereas Rivers is only point guard. So that'll hold it down a little bit. But Rivers is someone, I think, especially in large field tournaments, if his ownership stays as low as it is, you could roll the dice.
Yes, Malakar, the Josh mustache emoji is real. We got that. Made me very happy. That was one of the greatest shows ever. Well, that was a week worth of shows because Josh had to have a mustache for a week, and now we've turned it into an emoji. It's fantastic. You know what I was thinking with yours that we made a huge mistake on? I got to go ask Jake if we can change it. Why do we not have your Hulk emoji?
Oh, I'd forgotten about that.
So there was a show, we got time, don't worry, where you guys, the OGs, the Awesemo OGs remember this, where Adam's face just started turning completely green during the show, completely green, to the point where 5 minutes in, it was getting shaded a little bit, 15 minutes in, it's getting there, 20 minutes, it's completely green, but nothing else on your body, just your face went pure green like the Hulk.
Yeah, it was great. I totally forgot about that show. The screenshots from it are some of my favorites.
Yeah, we got to do that for sure. That will be a very, very popular emoji. And Street Preacher, you predict we'll get 500 likes by the end of the show. I love that prediction. Let's make it a reality. You ready to close this one out with Dallas and Sacramento?
Yeah, this should be fun.
All right. So Dallas and Sacramento is the late night hammer. As a matter of fact, it's the only game that starts at 10 o'clock. 5.5 point spread. Dallas favored on the road, 223.5 total. I've updated everything, so it should be on the screen. Doncic, Finney-Smith, probable. Porzingis, Redick, Richardson, doubtful. Maxi Kleber, questionable. Go to OddsShopper.awesemo.com and check out some of these props. Check out some of these lines. If news does happen to break on some of these games, you know where the best odds are that you can hit them before they go off the board and catch a huge swing when they come back on. I bet the Pistons last night plus 7.5. They're +4, +4.5 now. They may even move to +3.5 at one point. Even if I lose that bet, I'm getting 3-4 points on that. Using OddsShopper.com to shop around, find the best spots, and hit them before they move or before they go off when big news breaks. It's totally free. Everything there is 100% free. You can sort everything. You can search player props by name. You can check from every book out there. You can set a watch list. You can track your bets. You name it. Check it out. I think you'll like it. You don't have to pay a single cent for it. And really, any smart, sharp bettor will tell you that shopping odds is the way to have sustained success in sports betting. And I think this game could throw us some curveballs later at night. So be prepared for when any of these later games happen to throw us one of those curveballs. All right, so I'm going to toss it over to you. We got 5 minutes here. The Dallas Mavericks, Luka Doncic. The one thing I'll say, everyone is loving that Porzingis is doubtful. I was hoping that he played because now Doncic's ownership is going to end up coming up, even though his production doesn't really rise dramatically at all with Porzingis off the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it, though, because it just means ownership goes down on some combination of Westbrook and Jokic and,
Sure, but he was 3%, which was insane.
Oh, yeah, that's insane. We say the same thing about Doncic all the time. Do I believe that Porzingis being out actually makes Doncic a worse play? No. But we have 2 years now of Doncic not producing at a better rate with Porzingis out and actually being worse. So even though, like, his rates go up a little bit as far as usage goes, but so the ceiling maybe is a little bit higher, but the average production does not increase. And what does happen whenever Porzingis is out is people say, oh, Porzingis is out, need to flock to Luka, like you would if like Beal were out, for Westbrook, except the difference is that's actually backed up by numbers. It's not for Luka. That being said, you have a matchup against the Kings here. Luka, with or without Porzingis, is one of the best fantasy producers in the league, and now he's taking on a Kings team that doesn't defend well and plays at a fast pace. So Luka's still a great play. It's just, you want to pay attention to ownership and compare it to guys like Jokic and Westbrook, because there's a tendency for it to be inflated with Porzingis out when it really shouldn't be. But all that being said, Luka's still clearly one of the top options. But now there's value that you can look to here as well. The nice thing is that it sounds like we're going to have the same guys in that we had against the Lakers last game. Porzingis sat, Richardson sat. You got a starting lineup of Doncic, Hardaway, Finney-Smith, Kleba, and Powell. Dwight Powell played 28.5 minutes. He played really, really well. So he's cheap. He's playing the Kings, which means there's a good chance he plays well again. He's averaged 0.8 DraftKings points per minute when he's on the floor with Luka this year. I think he's a reasonable value. There's just some risk because if he plays poorly, then you can get more minutes going to Willie Cauley-Stein. But decent value there for Powell. Maxi Kleba, 4,100, played 33.5 minutes. Assuming he plays and starts, he's another reasonable value. He's a 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute guy. He's playing the Kings. He's cheap. So that would work. Tim Hardaway Jr. started, played 30 minutes, did not close the game. JJ Redick closed in his place, but he's only 4,300 on DraftKings facing the Kings. I think Hardaway ends up projecting as one of the better values now. And then Dorian Finney-Smith played 32 minutes. He typically is going to play 32 to 34. He's not a great fantasy producer by any stretch. Jalen Brunson is someone that, if the starting lineup tonight were to change, my guess is that Brunson ends up in it. But, for now, I'm going to assume that we get the same starting lineup we got last time. But Brunson is someone that, at least if the rotations are different tonight than they were last time, Brunson would be someone that does have some value. But assuming Hardaway starts, I would go to Hardaway over Brunson.
All right. Wow. The golden ratio. How about that? 500 to 0. Nice work, people. Appreciate you closing this one out. About to turn it over to the Live Before Lock crew. Coming up right after me, you got Josh Engleman. You got Greg Ehrenberg going all the way up till 7. They will have their hands full. So will you. You got to stick around if you're building lineups tonight. Don't jump off this stream thinking that we got it covered. The next hour is going to be absolutely critical in making sure we get everything, all of our bases covered. Adam, take it away. Sacramento Kings, De'Aaron Fox out for at least another week or so.
Yeah, so De'Aaron Fox out clearly opens things up because you're talking 37, 38 minutes. You're talking a bunch of usage and assist opportunities. Tyrese Haliburton moved into the starting lineup last game or yesterday, played 37.5 minutes. I don't anticipate that we consistently get that many minutes from him going forward, but I think that you're at least getting 34, 35 in most games. He's around the fantasy point per minute guy. So there's still some value there on Haliburton, even with the increasing price tag and the fact that Dallas is one of the slowest teams in the league. So he still looks pretty good. The rest of the Kings are kind of not that favorably priced. DeLon Wright is still a reasonable tournament option, played 27 minutes last game. I think there will be some games with Fox out where he plays 30, 31 minutes. He's averaged 0.84 DraftKings points per minute since joining the Kings. So just sort of a secondary option here. Buddy Hield, the ceiling gets higher. Last year, he had a 28% usage rate without Fox. This year, it's only about 20%. Even watching the game yesterday as someone that had him in lineups, he played well. He had a good game, but he was just shooting really well from three. He still wasn't he doesn't create for himself. He didn't have the ball in his hands a lot. He wasn't doing, a lot of driving to the basket or anything. He was just jacking up threes when Tyrese Haliburton passed him the ball. If they went in, great. If not, oh well. So the ceiling I think is still higher just because he can get more shot volume, but I still just don't believe that you see, the Buddy Hield from last year that was a 28% usage guy without Fox. Barnes, they ran the offense through him a lot early in the game until Golden State started taking it away. I do think you see an elevated ceiling for Barnes. Usage rate goes up a bit, assist percentage goes up a bit, playing without Fox and without Bagley. And he's second in the league in minutes per game over the last month. The issue is just that he's already up to 7,700 on DraftKings. He's 7K on FanDuel. So again, it's just more of a secondary option because the site's preemptively jacked up pricing on pretty much everyone on the Kings, with the exception of, they even did it with Haliburton. They just didn't do it far enough.
And I missed my pack.
Ah, shit.
You're probably fine. I completely missed mine.
Oh, yeah, I still have 24,000 to go.
Yep, no chance. Awesome stuff. Gotta love it. It doesn't matter. It'd be like a $7 pack anyway, which is a good thing. The ROI should not be 800% on every $9 pack, Anything else for Sacramento before we toss this one over to the Live Before Lock guys?
No, I think that's about it. I think Haliburton's the number one option from the Kings. Barnes, Hield, Wright are guys that if they end up in your lineup, it's fine, but I wouldn't be prioritizing them.
All right. Thanks guys for hanging out as always, guys. Adam and I will be back with you tomorrow, Tuesday, same time. Josh, Greg, coming up next. It is the Deeper Dive presented by OddsShopper.awesemo.com. We'll see you back here soon. Good luck tonight, everyone. Peace. Later, boys.
See you guys.
Guys,
Just get out of prison?
actually, yes, but unrelated.
What's that?
I can't hear you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure he has a business card, but no, not the one that I told you about.
This is going to be an interesting hour.
At least we got some of the news before.
Yeah. Sure, man. Go for it. And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Monday, April 26th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg, and we are here to take you up to lock on this 11-game NBA slate. We've already had a ton of news come out over the last hour. I assume we're going to have more. It's going to be one of those nights. Plus, basically every game is early. So even when it locks, I'm expecting news all the way up until 8 o'clock, at which point I think we can then breathe for a little bit, maybe get away from the computer, eat some dinner, and then come back for the final. No, you don't think that's going to happen?
No, absolutely not. I've been playing the NBA DFS over the last month, Josh, and that is absolutely not the case. There's no time for eating. There's no time to walk away from the computer. You sit here at the computer and you do not move for the entire night. This is the activity.
I hope you are incredibly wrong, but just in case you're not, we are here to break it all down and try to figure it out. Let me shut my laptop here. So you guys got over 500 likes on the last show. Unfortunately for me, I was hoping to corral all of those likes, but if you can, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. It helps us out a ton. And shout out to OddsShopper for being the presenting sponsor of this show. Has anything happened in the past 5 minutes that I needed to? Ben Simmons will play tonight. Good.
Yeah, so that was, somewhat expected. I still don't know what to make of the Sixers guys. Like, I feel like some of these guys are going to make it into my player pool. I just don't know which ones yet. It's going to obviously depend on the status of Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris. But I have this weird gut feeling that the reason Ben Simmons was upgraded from out to questionable in is number one, because he's feeling healthy enough to play, but also because they want to give Joel Embiid and or Tobias Harris a day off in what should be a pretty winnable game against the Thunder. So I would be pretty surprised if Embiid and Harris both play.
Ben Simmons, Furkan Korkmaz, Tobias Harris, and Paul Reed are all available tonight. Joel Embiid is still questionable. Danny Green is out. Mike Scott is also out.
So, like, if Joel Embiid is, and but like, I mean, how much logic can we apply to whatever Doc Rivers does with his injury reports and whatnot? But if you're going to rule everybody active at the same time, but not Joel Embiid, at least of like the pertinent players, but why would Joel Embiid end up playing still? Like, wouldn't you just rule him active with the other guys? Maybe I'm just reading into it, thinking too much, but my gut feeling is that he's going to end up sitting.
I think Embiid has a much longer warm-up process than everybody else. I think he's going to go out there, see how he feels, go through everything first. I don't think that it's all that big of a deal. Like, if you, like for Simmons, you either feel good or you don't. Like, he shows up and he probably just knows he's good. I don't remember what was wrong with Tobias Harris, but I kind of feel like Embiid's not going to play, but I don't feel like I'm in a position to take him out because that changes things dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, too, is so we've got 55 minutes until lock. It's a game that starts at 7 o'clock. It's definitely going to be news. I don't want to say definitely. It's 90% likely going to be news that happens sometime during the show before the slate actually starts. I mean, we've seen the Sixers say, hey, Embiid's playing, and they just rule him out 2 minutes after the game starts. But my assumption is probably in like 30 minutes or so we get news on Embiid officially.
So let's talk through Philly, because this does change. Mike Scott being out is largely irrelevant, but it is sort of like backup power forward minutes that matter. Danny Green being out actually does matter, especially with Korkmaz being in. So who do you see getting the biggest benefit from Danny Green being out?
Man, this is hard to say just because I don't want to commit myself to saying too much about the Sixers. I don't know if Joel Embiid's playing or not, right? So,
true.
I mean, to me, as of now, I have Ben Simmons in my player pool. Like, he's somebody I'm actually getting exposure to. And also, by the way, for the record, I'm playing lineups on Draftkings tonight, not Fanduel. As for the cheaper guys, I'm not sure there is one guy that stands out because we still have Seth Curry's going to get minutes, right? Shake Milton, George Hill. I think George Hill being in the mix really alters things for this team because it's just somebody else to give minutes to that we didn't have earlier in the season. And also we've seen, George Hill start recently, and I don't think he's somebody who's going to play massive minutes, but I think that his presence is enough to make it so that none of these other guys are viable value players, especially when there is so much value on the slate.
By the way, are you expecting Ben Simmons to play his full run?
If Joel Embiid is out, then yes.
Okay. I'm a little nervous that he can just go out there and play big minutes from missing like 10 straight days for illness. That seems like you're probably not coming back there with a full gas tank.
Potentially. If Joel Embiid's in, then I think it's something that I don't need to have like a ton of exposure to. But if Joel Embiid's out, like I'm still getting to Ben Simmons. It'd be really hard for me to ignore him in that kind of situation. Also that, the Sixers are in a spot where they're really pushing to get the number 1 overall seed in the East. This is a game they should win comfortably anyway. I'm actually more concerned about the spread of the game and that they're playing against the Thunder, who just rest guys for really no apparent reason, than actually how healthy Simmons is. Like, to me, in this game, Simmons wouldn't be playing unless he was, very good to go.
I'm only giving him 30 minutes. I'm a little nervous that he could just go out there and give like a full 16 and 16 across each half, given what he was out for. I don't have anything to back that up. It's just like obviously total feel. I'm nervous about it.
Well, if I was giving him 30 minutes, then he would definitely not end up being in my player pool at all.
Yeah, I don't anticipate getting all that much here.
No, I think it's a reasonable concern. And it's not like I have him in less than 10% of my lineup. So It's not like he's somebody who's, popping up everywhere for me, but he's somebody who still is a small piece of my player pool.
I mean, if Joel Embiid gets ruled out, I assume he's going to like pop up everywhere for you though.
Yes. If Joel Embiid's out, then he's going to be, I don't know exactly, but I'd guess somewhere in like the 15 to 20% range.
That's terrifying to me right now. Very, very terrifying. Let's see. Who do we get a ban here? Let me try to find it.
We got nonsense going on?
Yeah. I just can't figure out who it is. Trying to find it. Yeah, that'll work. Goodbye. Oh, somebody already got it. Never mind. The news god beat me to it. I tried to get there. All right, so is it Korkmaz? Is it Matisse Thybulle? Like, who gets that big chunk of Danny Green? Is it Shake? I mean, they have so many guys, but like I feel like one of them has to crest this lineup here. Or am I crazy?
I mean, I don't think you're crazy, but I think in the context of this slate, right? It's an 11-game slate. We had, 35 players that were questionable earlier in the day. We've had that pared down because a lot of guys have gotten ruled out. But in the context of the slate, it doesn't have to be any one guy because I think there's so much better value elsewhere. Like we talk about Dallas being in the last game of the day, and I think that's a really good value spot with Porzingis out. And there's nobody on Philadelphia that I think is going to be that strong of a value play. When I think like the most likely outcome for me with like George Hill, Matisse Thybulle, Shake Milton, Seth Curry, Furkan Korkmaz, I think all these guys play somewhere around 25-ish minutes, and none of them have substantial enough upside, in my opinion, to really break an 11-game slate where we're going to have so many options.
Yeah, just giving out all the minutes that I just did, barring the change to whatever the starting lineup ends up being, which could be anything. And the fact that while I understand that Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid were out in their last game along with Korkmaz, it's possible that Anthony Tolliver just becomes today's Mike Scott. And if that's the case, then all those guard minutes just sort of sort themselves out. Lonnie Walker available to play, by the way, as is Rudy Gay.
Oh, Rudy Gay, that's interesting. I assume he's going to be out.
Change anything for me? Does that change anything for you?
Not really. I mean, it changes like how many minutes I think guys in the Spurs are going to play. It means I get like DeJounte Murray in a couple less lineups.
Okay. Yeah, I really like Murray and I really like Derek White today on FanDuel. I'm really curious to see how much of those two guys I get, just because matchup against Washington is usually pretty tasty. And DeJounte Murray likes getting steals, and that's probably a decent thing for turnover-prone Russell Westbrook.
Especially a turnover-prone Russell Westbrook, who may or may not be on a bad wheel right now.
Yeah, honestly. From super chat from Paul just came in, and from Tim Scanlon. No question attached to Tim. He had 2 super chats there, but Paul says, Greg and Josh, you guys do a great job. Keep up the good work. Best 4K value plays to me are Craig Osman. Oh, I thought that was supposed to be Cedi. Craig, Osman, Gafford, and Powell. Yeah. I don't know how happy I am about getting to Torrey Craig today, but I think Cedi is pretty safe. As safe as Cedi Osman can be.
I am underweight to the field on Torrey Craig. And I mean, like, points per dollar, I don't think he looks bad to me. But so he's 3,500. He's, pretty popular for this slate on DraftKings, coming in at over 20% ownership the last I looked. And sure, he scored 41.5 fantasy points last game. But I mean, we've seen a lot of Torrey Craig getting extended minutes over the course of his NBA career. And every once in a while, he has a pretty strong game like he did last game, but they're generally outliers, right? He's not a good points per minute fantasy producer on the whole. So if you get to Torrey Craig, like, it's not an issue for me in any individual lineup, but a matchup against the Knicks is really difficult, and I would be really surprised if Torrey Craig breaks the slate. So to me, he's going over-owned.
I think he's I was very surprised to see his ownership. That caught me off guard. I'd rather be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, for the season, Torrey Craig, actually his points per minute production this year isn't as bad as it's been in previous seasons. 14 minutes per game, averaging 12.81 DraftKings points. But also, like I said, like, the Knicks are one of the most difficult matchups for fantasy purposes. The game only has a 215.5 total. Phoenix is playing on the tail end of a back-to-back. So if Torrey Craig scores like around 25 fantasy points, I mean, and you play him, that's fine. Except I think it's very unlikely that he breaks the slate, just given what we've seen from him as a points per minute fantasy producer over the course of his career.
Another super chat here from Noah. FanDuel GPP, Dozier and Collins, or DeRozan and Roby?
Dozier and Collins amongst that grouping for me.
I would agree. Active, inactive list for Orlando. Nothing too crazy there. They have so many inactive guys that are inactive are active. So that's always usually good for a certain team. Like James Ennis is on the active list. He is not actually active to play this game. Tim Scanlon with another $1 super chat. I'm quite confident at this point that Tim is trying to do something else but failing. So, Tim, best of luck to you on that super chat endeavor. Normally, I'd be asking you how you feel about the guards on this slate. I think we have like a brief window to get those questions in. How do you feel about the guards on this slate? Where are you going today?
Ooh, I mean, there is so much. It was really funny earlier today because somebody had, I tweeted this also, but somebody had DM'd me like really early in the day and said, who's the best pay up point guard on DraftKings today? I went and looked at the injury report, and it was the top 6 were all on the injury report at the time, which at the time that included Luka being questionable and Westbrook being questionable. I've about split exposure to Westbrook and Luka. They're also my 2 most exposed point guards on DraftKings right now. As a cheaper option, Jalen Brunson is my favorite. I think Westbrook and Luka are both really strong plays for different reasons. Number one, given where the Wizards are in the standings right now, like we've seen Westbrook play just a massive role over the last month. And I understand he wasn't great yesterday. Maybe there'll be some recency bias there, but he's been good so many games before then. Yesterday was just an outlier. That's not the norm. He's basically been a walking triple-double. And then with Luka, even though for not just the season, but for the last couple of years, his numbers haven't really increased when Porzingis has been off the court. There's so many other guys that are out for Dallas also. And also, given where Dallas is in the standings right now, favorable matchup against the Kings, I have to think that Luka is going to see a really substantial usage rate in this matchup, and it's a really strong one.
I hope that he does. I'm a big fan of Luka today. A. Dean with the super chat. Good luck on this insane slate. Appreciate y'all being live to lock. That must be rough. It is. It is really an undesirable feeling to be locked or to be live for an 11-game slate. and have this much just hanging in the balance. But pretty used to it at this point.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at multitasking. Like, I don't have an issue because also when we have news and stuff, I'm just talking through what I'm doing on my computer anyway, right? And like it's like, oh, these are the minutes I think these guys are going to play, and then just as we're doing it, it's adjusting my lineups also. So it's really just what I would be doing anyway, but I'm just talking it out loud.
Yep, we're on the exact same page there. I've done it. Muscle memory has been good enough. The only problems that come into play are when they happen at like 6:50 and two guys from two separate games get ruled out. It's like, okay, everything that I had before no longer exists, and I am now starting the clock. And that's when it's awful. Like right now, I don't really care what news comes in until like basically 6:40, 6:45. Like all of it's meaningless. I don't anticipate the crunch that I just started being meaningful at all in a half hour, but I am happy to see like how things are hashing themselves out. But for all intents and purposes, what I'm doing right now is irrelevant.
Yeah, that's by the way, that's also something I've figured out over the over the last years, that there's no need to sweat trying to upload my lineups and get them entered into, like contests before we start the show. Like as long as I have everything reserved, it doesn't matter. I'm changing it during the show anyway. That is just a stone. Like it's hard to call anything a lock in NBA DFS, but the lock always is that I'm going to change my lineups at some point during the show, and I don't need a hurry to get them uploaded ahead of time.
And honestly, Tim Scanlon just keeps breaking off singles and throwing them into chat. We might have to start taking our clothes off.
Hey, I'm game.
Fair enough. I wouldn't mind it, honestly. Not you personally, me taking some clothes off. Anyway, I have two more super chats to hit on. I had something else I wanted to say. Oh, yeah. I try not to upload my lineups now because I know that my dummy lineup doesn't have anything locking at 7 o'clock. So at the very least, if something goes wrong, I'm not dead in the water. The moment you upload everything, you kind of just want to like have that extra lineup in a CSV ready to re-upload it if you need to.
Yeah, I mean, that's so something else. Also,
we got news.
Oh,
sorry,
right.
and it's pretty big news. Tyler Hero and Kendrick Nunn are both out today.
Okay, so let's jump over to Miami then, because that is going to matter.
Two additional super chats. One, is it okay to start Capella and Collins together?
No,
probably not with Capella's price tag. I do like Collins, and look, like it's just too big of a slate for that. You should be able to find something else. Ingles or Bogdanovich for the Jazz.
Ingles.
But I could go either direction, honestly.
Yeah, I prefer Ingles. I don't have a ton of exposure to either, though.
So let's walk through this Miami Heat news now, which is very important. Tyler Hero, Gonzo, Kendrick Nunn, Gonzo. The real question is, how many minutes can Goran Dragic play?
Let's look at his recent game logs.
He got to 28 on the 19th. But he also then played 19, 18, and then didn't play on the back-to-back. I think probably 28 to 30 is where we're going to be looking here.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen him. I mean, the other thing to consider also is, so in recent games, he's played very poorly when he's been on the court. So that's something that I think has decreased his minutes. But with that said, we've seen him be capable of playing bigger minutes as soon as, let's see, like a week and a half ago. Those are the games he played: 28 minutes against Houston, 31 minutes against Brooklyn. So if need be, he could play those minutes. I actually think it could potentially help his workload that he didn't play last game. I think that has him a little bit, better rested and able to handle a fuller workload. So Goran Dragic.
I think their game price 2 nights ago should be a decent proxy. Like Hero and Dragic didn't play, but Nunn was in. Now I guess we're just flip-flopping that. I assume this largely looks the same. Gabe Vincent plays, 22 to 26 minutes, something along those lines. Iguodala is out, so he just becomes KZ Okpala. I think the swaps here are pretty easy. It's the rates that I think will be the most important piece of all of it.
Yeah, so a 5,000 price tag for Goran Dragic on DraftKings. He's going to end up in a lot of my lineups because I'm giving him 30 minutes.
Here's a question more for you, just because you said you're playing a DraftKings today, but there is absolutely no way we're going to have a legitimate answer here. Hey guys, and sorry, Charles, but this one's just going to be tough. This is a bit of a specific question, but I'm doing a single entry for the Lakers Magic Showdown. Is it worth looking at the $1,000 Orlando players?
All right, so I like how you pawn this off on me, where you're like, "Hey,
Steven Adams out, James Johnson out."
All right, so we'll talk about that in a second. I want to. By the way, I like how you pawn this question off on me, where because you're pretending as if this matters site to site, as if like, Greg will know the answer because because his lineups on DraftKings, so yours on FanDuel. So I'm opening up the. There's at no point today did I think to look at the pricing for this showdown contest, but I'm looking at the players right now, and no, none of them at 1,000 are worth rostering. Like most of these guys are not going to be in the rotation. So. By the way, the 1K Orlando players are Robert Franks. That's a no. Jonathan Isaac and Markelle Fultz. There's only 3 of them, and none of them are going to play minutes.
No. Definitely don't roster Fultz. That much I am super comfortable in taking that stand.
Do you feel better about Fultz or Jonathan Isaac?
Fultz, honestly. As weird as that sounds.
None of the 1K Orlando players.
Good God, I am having some trouble figuring out what in the world is going to happen for this Miami team. There's not a lot of places for minutes to go. I am about to check out rates and see what these guys look like, because I think there could be some decent swings with Hero off, with Nunn off. Like Nunn is sometimes a high usage guy, sometimes not so much.
Yeah, sometimes he isn't even in the rotation.
Yeah, it's he has had a very interesting season. Even like the past 18 months, from starter last year, out of the rotation in the bubble, now playing like 30 minutes a game again with mostly everybody back. I mean, Oladipo's there, but he's not really like a Miami Heat guy at this point. Like Dragic gets, oh man, this is wild. Does Butler take any big hits? 33% usage. Okay, so this is important then. With no Kendrick Nunn, no Tyler Hero, and no Victor Oladipo on the floor in 161 minutes, Jimmy Butler has a 33% usage rate so far this season.
So I just...
Not a big sample, but like, it's definitely an increase.
So I just updated the Heat, and I had Jimmy Butler for about 47.5 fantasy points. And that gets him into my player pool, but not like really meaningfully. The reason being is because still the overall optimal lineups on this slate to me are it's still going to be paying up for Jokic, Westbrook, and Doncic, and then going cheap with other guys. So Dragic is the Heat guy that by far ends up in the most amount of my lineups right now. But it's hard to get to a meaningful amount of Jimmy Butler just on DraftKings where there's so much positional flexibility, and it's just easy enough to get up to the real stars and go cheap.
Yeah, FanDuel, very different story for Jimmy Butler. Having to roster 2 small forwards. He is the most expensive small forward. And now to me, earlier today, this was not the case. He is now my 3rd ranked small forward behind Michael Porter Jr. and Cedi Osman. Cedi, the flat minimum on FanDuel. So, well, more Jimmy Butler coming down the pike for me. Now let's slide on over to the New Orleans Pelicans. Willy Hernangomez starting for Steven Adams. So there's that. No James Johnson, also important. We figure in something close to a 24-24 split for Willy Hernangomez and Jackson Hayes here.
Let's see. I'm going to pull up the game logs because we've seen Willy Hernangomez start this year. So I'm going to go back to look at some of the other ones we've seen. Overall, as a starter this year, Hernangomez made 2 starts, 23 minutes per game, 27.5 fantasy points. So that seems pretty reasonable at first glance that he splits minutes with Jackson Hayes. I'm just going to pull up those games to see what exactly happened in them.
So they still played alongside each other. On April 2nd, Willy Hernangomez... Oh, no, I was scooping up Wissa one, dude. That's untrue. 48 minutes on the dot. So never mind what I'm saying there. All right, so if Willy Hernangomez is starting, though, you assume he's the guy that gets more minutes.
Yeah, so here's the last time he started was a game against Boston. He played 22.5 minutes. Jackson Hayes played 13.5 minutes that game. There was no Steven Adams. Najee Marshall was not somebody who was in the rotation at the time, which I guess he's viable if they want to go smaller lineups and put Zion in at center. I don't know that I actually want to give Hernangomez 24 minutes. That might have him popping up in too many of my lineups. But I think I'm going to go 23 for him.
We got to remember, though, like James Johnson also not able to play here. So they're running a bit thinner on bigs. They're basically missing 2 guys that are functional 5s in the NBA at this point.
So that game was against Boston. It kind of plays small anyway. But they
does Wenyen Gabriel or Will Magny get minutes here? I doubt it.
They gave Melly that game 17 minutes. Obviously, that's kind of irrelevant. Let's see.
Yeah, he's not going to get those, I don't think.
No. Let's see. The game before was a game against Phoenix where he played 23 minutes And who'd they give minutes to? So it was 20 for Jackson Hayes, 23 for Hernan Gomez. They gave Gabriel 2.5 minutes in that game. Melly played 2.5 minutes.
And I think the most important piece of all of this is that we probably need to project these guys for pretty heavy minutes for them to be viable, because a matchup against the Clippers is terrible.
So Willie Hernan Gomez, is he the flat min, or is he more than the min on draft? He's 3,600 on DraftKings. So let's see. Yeah, I'm going to give him 23 minutes. That's going to be enough, I think, to get him, to get me exposure to him, but not enough to make him rival the likes of, like Cedi Osman or let me think, who are some of the other cheap guys I'm getting to on this slate. Jalen Brunson, Daniel so I still prefer Osman, Gafford. Although this will probably lower my exposure to like Cameron Johnson, who I had some exposure to, and I'll get I'll shares of Hernan Gomez for sure. But there's still guys I prefer for cheap.
So for right now, I gave Willie Hernan Gomez 23, Jackson Hayes 20, 5 more minutes for Wenyen Gabriel, plus another 6 at the 4, and then Wes Iwundu back into the rotation for 16. And I think that kind of just creates a bit of a wash. None of the guys for New Orleans outside of slightly little bits of Willie Hernan Gomez, but center is loaded today, particularly on FanDuel, especially, well, depending on whether or not we get Joel Embiid, but there's enough at center that you could end up with shares of Willie Hernan Gomez. If you think that there's some upside there, I wouldn't talk you out of it, but he would not be any sort of priority for me. DraftKings is a little bit different of a story since you could roster more than one.
Yeah. I think where it gets interesting is whether to play him in cash games or not. And that's going to depend on what the ownership is. Like if he becomes a really popular play as the starting center, then I think you kind of have to play him in cash games just because the upside is so substantial. But Jokic is going to be taking up a lot of my center spots on DK.
I would be surprised if he became super popular, but there are guys that are picking up ownership today that I would have never expected to pick up ownership. So we'll see where that actually ends up. I'm clicking go on a crunch right now. Probably a good time to say, hit that like button. Once again, subscribe to the channel, notification bell, all that good stuff. Normally I would read the schedule right now. Can't do that. There aren't any shows after this. So watch the Slate starter, watch the process show. Those will be the next 2 shows that show up. Yeah, Alvin says, don't forget about money time. You got the wrong guy. Free content for today, premium level content at awesemo.com, including NBA projections. Yes, that's true. NBA projections are free today. MLB ownership projections. You're not watching the baseball show, but just in case you're playing both sports, MLB ownership is free today, along with NHL player projections. Lots of good stuff. The best projections in the business, people. If you want to check them out, people are always wondering, like, do you run any free trials? No, we just have some free days where some of this stuff gets in front of the paywall. And today, NBA projections are free. Can't ask for much more for that one. Whew. Rondo in. Thank God. That was just not a change I cared to make. Even though I was just going to take his 19 minutes and probably give them straight to Yogi Ferrell or something.
So, by the way, Hernan Gomez is in 25% of my DraftKings lineups right now.
Here's a quote from Ty Lue. Ty Lue says the Clippers coaching staff has talked to Ivica Zubac about resting for a few games, but he's refused thus far.
What is... Who tweeted that? Jovan?
Garrett Chorpenning. He's a credentialed Clippers reporter and deputy editor for allclippers.com.
I'm just kind of curious to open up that tweet. So, do you think there's I'm not building lineups based on news that Zubac, like I'm not rostering Zubac right now anyway, but
Lou said he might have to start him for a few minutes at some point and then sit him for the rest of the game to get him rest.
What kind of nonsense is this? Like what?
I have no idea what I'm reading right now. Insanity.
What would they even... So you know what's actually really annoying about that? Like they have DeMarcus Cousins now signed to a contract for the rest of the year. So like there's no chance I'm playing Cousins right now, but if something happens where Cousins is starting last second, like I assume he's close to min price. I can't remember the last time I thought of Cousins as as a DFS play outside of all the times he disappointed me and crushed my hopes and dreams when he was with the Houston Rockets. But
he's 4K. There's no way anyway. You can't play a single share of him today unless we know that something weird happens there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If he starts, then then I'd have to. But I'm not reading into the Zubats news at all.
No. Knicks will start Peyton, Barrett, Bullock, Randall, and Noel. Cool. Easy enough. Thank God. I didn't need any more nonsense there. All right, so let's take a little bit of a brief break. Joel Embiid is available and will start tonight.
Okay, so
floor is yours.
I'm going to get to very little Sixers players overall with that news. Like I just don't think there's a need to go there. I have a couple lineups with Ben Simmons right now, but I mean enough other plays have opened up as we've gone over the course of the show now. There's to me not a whole lot of reason to be like in that upper mid range with guys like Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris. Also, with everybody playing, a lot of blowout risk going up against the Oklahoma City Thunder. So, not a spot that I'm dying to get to.
I will be taking a very close look at Joel Embiid based on his ownership and the relationship of that ownership to Nikola Jokic for today. Because I think that there is some utility there if he ends up being staggeringly low owned. I don't know if he will. We'll see once we get an update now that we know that he is in. Simmons, Curry, Korkmaz, Harris, and Embiid starters for the Philadelphia 76ers. None of that is terribly shocking to me.
No, other than that, I mean, everybody playing is kind of surprising to me, but the guys who are actually starting after we find out that everybody's playing, not surprising.
Agreed. Okay, so that's pretty normal. Nothing wild here. Crunch is coming out. Still Haliburton, still Cedi at the top for me on Fanduel, which is an interesting day. Cedi going from not playing at all to 36-minute a game min salary guy is just a great journey. When he hangs 8 fantasy points tonight, you make sure you take this soundbite that I called that he gets 8.
And by the way, not even the first time we've gone through the Cedi Osman rodeo this year. Like, this is a fairly regular occurrence for him where it's either all or nothing. There is no thing where it's like, hey, Cedi Osman is a marginal piece of the rotation. It's generally Cedi Osman is either playing a couple of minutes or it's like Cedi Osman plays all of the minutes.
It's the worst thing in the world to roster Cedi Osman and not know if it's good or bad. I remember when he went nuts at the beginning of that one game where he had like 5 points, 3 boards, and 2 assists, and I was like, really, really happy about my jock market performance. And then I don't think that he did anything else for the rest of the game.
There was another game though, where I can't remember. He was kind of a somewhat chalk play, and then he ended up coming off the bench and like nobody rostered him, but you were really high on him. And then he was like 3% owned and scored like 40 fantasy points. I remember that being a pretty good day earlier in the year.
It was a good day. Soul Dope with the super chat. FanDuel question. Brunson and Barnes versus Fred VanVleet and Gafford plus Roby Toots. There's no vowels in that final word.
I believe it's
Roby
thoughts. No, I mean, or Roby tights, whatever. It could be either one. So first of all, I prefer Daniel Gafford to Isaiah Roby because I assume that is what that part of the question is. So Fred VanVleet is a massively different play on FanDuel and DraftKings with a big price difference. Yep. But I prefer the VanVleet and Gafford side.
So do I. Yeah, Brunson is a big-time question mark, and I don't think VanVleet and Gafford really are. I mean, Gafford is a question mark, but he's like a different kind of question mark. Magic will start Anthony, Harris, Bacon, Okeke, and Carter. Lakers will start Schroeder, KCP, Kuzma, Davis, and Drummond.
What do you make of Anthony Davis's minutes for tonight?
I gave him 32.
Okay, I gave him 30.
I had him at 30 earlier. Once they said that he was no longer on a minutes limit, I gave him 2 additional minutes. I still don't want to give him like 36, like what I would obviously expect. But I was trying to be apprehensive to start today. If they're willing to say that he's not on a minutes limit, I'm willing to at least give him like normal starter minutes.
Yeah, there was
no comfort in that either, by the way.
No. There was a split second where I was like, is he going to be like kind of interesting contrarian play for me? And then just like once, but that was before we had Westbrook in. That was before we had Luka in. Once those guys were in, it was not a consideration. But there was a point in the day where I thought about it.
I get it. All right, so just so everybody knows, I just ran a 1,000 lineup crunch for FanDuel just to put this information out there. Guys I'm expecting to be pretty high on: Tyrese Haliburton, obviously; Cedi Osman, obviously; Nikola Jokic; Jared Allen. Joel Embiid will do something once I see his updated ownership, but those guys are looking to be the core pieces for me. I really like John Collins on FanDuel at 7,100, particularly at a relatively low ownership number. We have him at 11 the last time that I saw it. If that holds in any way, I am going to be very happy about getting to John Collins. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But that to me feels like a really nice large field GPP option.
Yeah, I don't have exposure to him on DraftKings, but I understand on FanDuel, especially because of the positionality.
Yeah, very different play between FanDuel and DraftKings. Very, very different. All right, I'm cleaning out a bunch more. All right, so let's try to work it back to actual positional structures here. Any thoughts on the forwards for today's slate?
All right, so I just had my lineups rerun. So one of my most exposed players on the slate right now is Tim Hardaway Jr. So one thing that I think is going to be pretty tricky with the Dallas Mavericks is that whether Maxi Kleber plays or not has a very big impact on playing time for Dallas. Because if he's in, I expect him to play a ton of minutes. If he's out, that is a lot of minutes up for grabs. And it's also the last game on the slate. It's a 10 o'clock start time, and there is no other 10 o'clock games. So I have Maxi Kleber in my player pool right now. And if he's out, then that's just so many minutes to allocate to guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., who I expect to play a healthy amount of minutes, like Dorian Finney-Smith, Dwight Powell. So one of the reasons I like Tim Hardaway Jr. a lot now is already he rates out pretty well for me. But then also if we potentially have Maxi Kleber out, like I don't see any way around Tim Hardaway doing anything other than just playing a massive amount of minutes. And it's such a good matchup against the Kings.
I like that. I'm not getting to a ton of him on FanDuel, but I understand where you're coming from. I ended up giving him 30 minutes. Let me see the price differential here just to make sure I'm not missing anything. Hardaway, 4,100 on FanDuel. To me, like a solid value play. 4,300 on DraftKings. Does he have shooting guard, small forward?
He is small. I think just small forward, actually.
Okay. That's the worst. I like him more on DraftKings than I do on FanDuel for the flexibility. I don't know if he has enough full upside at the position on FanDuel, just looking at what's around him right now, because he's not a small forward on FanDuel.
So something else I'll add to that before we move past the Mavericks thing. So something else I like about having Maxi and Hardaway in my player pool right now is, let's say that Maxi gets moved in. Gets ruled in. I want to have the flexibility to be able to swap to him at low ownership. If Maxi gets ruled out, I want to have the flexibility to swap to whatever. Like the Mavericks do such weird things with their starting lineups. Like I want to have the flexibility to swap to whoever ends up becoming really strong value plays if Maxi Kleber is ruled out. And I think that going overweight to the field on Hardaway is just an easy way to give me flexibility for in the last game of the night.
I have no qualms with what you just said. That makes a ton of sense. You want to leave yourself the functionality to be able to make moves if you need to. Just a kid from Akron, Pirtle or Allen for center on FanDuel. That is not even remotely close. It's Jared Allen by like 100 miles.
Are they priced similarly on FanDuel?
Jared Allen is 5,700. Jakob Pirtle is 6,500.
Yeah, that's Jared Allen for me. That's it. I didn't look at FanDuel enough to even realize that Jared Allen was that much cheaper than Pirtle.
Jared Allen is one of the best values on the slate. I don't get the sense that I'll have a single share of Jakob Pirtle today.
I don't have any Pirtle on DraftKings.
Yeah, not a Jake Puds day today. Anybody that you're seeing that's ranked relatively highly in our ownership that you do not anticipate getting to with any sort of regularity, at least?
Torrey Craig.
We got an ownership update 9 seconds ago, by the way.
Oh, okay. So let me look at the new ownership and see what's in there now. It's refreshing for me. Wow. Tim Hardaway is very popular now.
Yeah.
Let's see. Still Torrey Craig. Torrey Craig coming in at 16% ownership. I'm nowhere near that right now. He's the biggest one for me to be underweight to. In terms of other popular guys, let's see. Do I have much Kenrich Williams? Kenrich Williams, somebody else that I'm underweight to the field on. So Kenrich Williams at 17.5% ownership. Torrey Craig at 16.2. It's is there news?
It's not real news. Sorry. John Wall to miss the rest of the season.
Oh, wow.
So yes, it's news, but it's not at all. As far as news goes for today, it's the most meaningless news.
Yes, agreed. So anyway, those two, Kenrich Williams and Torrey Craig, both like points per dollar plays. They're okay, except to me, I just don't see all that much upside in them relative to all the other value plays we have on the slate. So I think they're going overowned.
By the way, it's very clearly obvious that sitting down John Wall to not get hurt playing for the Houston Rockets is the clear, smart move. Just what are you going to get out of that, man?
Does it even matter what the Rockets do at this point?
I mean, if I'm John Wall, like just...
No, well, yeah.
You're already brittle. Don't break yourself playing for nothing. Brandon Goodwin, Kevin Huerter, Bogdan Bogdanovic, John Collins, Clint Capella, starters for the Atlanta Hawks tonight.
Nothing surprising there.
That's exactly what I was expecting once Lou Will got ruled out. Brandon Goodwin, my immediate thought when I saw the Lou Will news was like, all right, now we're going to get that legit Brandon Goodwin starting chalk game. I forgot his price is still up. So like he's not even all that interesting.
No, and I'm still bitter about the Brandon Goodwin game from the other day where it was like 40% owned on DraftKings. He played 20 minutes and I was massively underweight to the field on him. And he still got there in 20 minutes. I was like, that's nonsense.
Yeah, it's the worst. Tim Scanlon throwing in another single. Greg, you got to take off your AirPods or something, man, because this dude's looking for something. Tim, I appreciate it. I don't know. Now I don't even know if this is just the gimmick or not.
No, I mean, by the way, if I like to think he's in on it and not just struggling with his computer. Because I mean, if he just thinks this is a funny bit, like it's hilarious, right?
Yeah.
If he's just struggling with his computer, I kind of feel bad for him because he might not even know he's donating this money to us.
Yeah, that's also true. Tim, if you have a question or anything, man, just like ask it. Don't even worry about the super chat at this point because you're dropping singles everywhere. You should get one of those money guns to shoot it at us. I don't know what else to do at this point. We might as well just take questions for the rest of this. Okay, Piston starters, actually. Corey Joseph, Wayne Ellington, Sadiq Bey, Jeremy Grant, Mason Plumlee. That makes, for the most part, sense.
Did you get exposure to anybody from the Pistons in a meaningful amount? Like, I have, like, a couple lineups with Jeremy Grant, but, like, I don't have, like, significant Pistons exposure.
As far as I know, no. I'm just going to open it up right now just to look and see. 6% Jeremy Grant is on this like random ass crunch that I ran before. Every one lineup of Frank Jackson, one of Sadiq Bey, one of Corey Joseph. All three of those guys will not be a part of the crunch that's running right now, though. So,
all right, yeah, I've really struggled to ever know what to do with the Pistons minutes, unless it's one of those days where just everybody's out.
We have firmed up the Cleveland Cavaliers news. Darius Garland, Isaac Okoro, Cedi Osman, Kevin Love, and Jarrett Allen rounding out the starting lineup for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Anything you want to do with that information?
I'm playing Cedi. I was playing Cedi anyway, and I'm uploading lineups right now. I mean, to me, Cedi must play in cash games. One of the best overall plays on the slate. He's chalky. Does not matter to me.
Joe, I've seen you ask this question before, so I just want to hit on it. Any thoughts on Dean Wade, FanDuel, min price with Hartenstein out? Absolutely not today.
I think I had like one lineup earlier today with him on DraftKings, but like in general, no.
Yeah, no, it's just got to be a no. It's just got to be a no. There's just too much other stuff out there. Like he could go for 35 tonight and it'd just be completely meaningless. There's just too much out there.
Did you roster Garland at all? He was too expensive for me to get to on DraftKings.
I don't believe so. If I did, I probably only have a mild amount. I had 8% on the last run. I am too busy rostering Cedi and Jarrett Allen in most of my stuff. So I don't think the 3-man Cavs core is getting anybody anywhere because it's certainly not getting the Cavs anywhere.
No, that is reasonable enough. Yeah.
Sorry, Cavs. Yeah, let's just take questions for the rest of this. It'd be crazy to try to do anything else. What did I get tagged in here in internal Slack? All right, that's just a support message. It's not me. Curtis McMillan. Nobody's talking about Bogey. Crazy usage with no Lou, Will, and Trey seems like a smash spot. He's just expensive.
He's really expensive, especially. So, all right, let me pull up the overall DraftKings pricing and see the guys who are priced around him.
Yeah. Obviously, I like him as a guy to score a lot of fantasy points for the Hawks.
Yeah, I mean, there have been times where Bogdanovich has been an excellent play, but we have to consider salary here, and he's at what was it, 7,800? So he's okay. So for reference, he's 7,800 right now. Ben Simmons is 7,900. Like John Morant is 8,200 on DraftKings. Then if you go to some of the guys who are cheaper than him, like Chris Paul is 7,600. Tobias Harris 7,600. So you're looking at Bogdanovich, and it's just look at the likes of the players he's priced around. He's priced around legitimate all-stars, right? And obviously he's playing a really big role for them right now, but I mean, it's still the price is accounting for it at this point.
Lowry, Van Vliet, Anunoby, Siakam, Birch, Westbrook, Neto, Beal, Rui, Alex Len.
You going Alex Len again? There's no Robin Lopez. I know you're the Alex Len guy.
I mean, that's tricky, right? Like, how do you feel about this combination of Daniel Gafford and Alex Len? Alex Len is the flat minimum on FanDuel today, 3,400 on DraftKings. Daniel Gafford normally priced 3,900 on DK. Gafford is 5,100 on FanDuel.
You know, it's actually really unfortunate now that I think about this. So Daniel Gafford Daniel Gafford is the fourth highest owned player on DraftKings right now. I think Gafford is a really, really strong play. Cash games play Daniel Gafford. He's one of the guys I have the most exposure to in GPP as well. I'm just given what the ownership is on Gafford and that Len is starting. I'm really strongly considering right now just going like 15% Alex Len, capping him at that, setting a rule in Fantasy Cruncher where I don't put Len and Gafford together. Because one of the ways that Gafford fails is if Alex Len plays like 27 minutes today.
I really, really wish that news came out like 10 minutes ago so I could redo this crunch. Because Gafford's a power forward on FanDuel, and that's becoming like a real big issue. And he's 5,100. Like, he's not even priced well. Oof. Let's run all of his numbers down to the ground here. Because I have... Not that I, like, definitely thought that he was starting, but at the same time, I wanted him to.
Yeah, I'm
still going to have like 20 to 30% of Daniel Gafford on FanDuel today because that's just sort of how power forward looks to me, but I don't like it.
So he's 3,900 on DraftKings. He's in 40% of my lineups right now. He's a very strong value play. But if you were in my situation and just thinking about the ways that Daniel Gafford fails, I think it makes sense to play a few lineups with Alex Len just because there's so much leverage there.
Absolutely. Without question. I mean, you can make a case that Alex Len is just also a decent play. Like, even ignoring the Daniel Gafford piece, like, he's a starting center with only two centers. They've done weird stuff where he's just played a bunch. Like, it's not outside of the realm of possibility that just happens. It is still just Daniel Gafford, you know?
All right, let's see. I'm updating this.
I am pushing Embiid up quite a bit in my FanDuel exposures. And by quite a bit, I mean like making sure that I get to him. But nothing too crazy. I have an infinite amount of Tyrese Haliburton on FanDuel right now with no regrets whatsoever.
That's reasonable. There's a big price difference on him between DraftKings and FanDuel.
Yeah. Jared Allen is just popping up like crazy too. And I don't really know if there's much that I can do about it on FanDuel. He's so likely to make value, like almost by default. Like 5,700 for Jared Allen. I mean, we're talking about needing what? Oh, Jesus, is that right? Well, like Jared Allen going for 40 today on FanDuel is not at all surprising. I mean, you obviously have to dodge the Jokic Embiid like crazy games, the true ceiling games, but there's not that much out there. Bryson Henry with the super chat. Russ has an 18% boom, but shows in the optimal 24% risky. I don't find Russell Westbrook to be risky in any way.
All right, so let's look through. So, all right, this could be a little bit influenced by what he did yesterday, right? But let's look at Russell Westbrook's game log before yesterday. All right, so Russell Westbrook, before yesterday's game, when do you think was the last time he had a game with less than 50 DraftKings points?
I mean, it had to be weeks.
It was over a month. It was a game against the Knicks on March 23rd because the game was a blowout and he just didn't play in the fourth quarter. He played 28 minutes that game. So the last time he scored less than 50 fantasy points in a game where he got a full allotment of minutes was March 10th against the Grizzlies.
Yeah. Russ is as safe as it gets in terms of basketball players. Now, if we're talking about, like GPP pivots and ownership, like, sure, there are different directions you can go here today, but you're never going to feel bad about having him.
Well, you shouldn't, at least.
No. Yeah. If you do, like, reevaluate. I am King Sosa says, Allen is the slate breaker. You've been warned. That is not a hot take.
No.
No, that is not a hot take. Wow, I have a lot of DeJounte Murray that I'm not really mad about. All right, so who are some of your most exposed players as we have 9 minutes to go until lock? By the way, if you guys are trying to bet on any of these games, the best place that you could do that, at least from a shopping the lines perspective, OddsShopper. Go to OddsShopper.awesemo.com. It lays out everything for you. You could track your bets. You could shop the lines. And if you're not shopping your lines before placing bets, you are making the biggest mistake you can make. It's like seeing a tournament that has overlay and deciding against it. Take the overlay, take the shopping of the line. Even if it's just the difference between just regularly betting minus 109 instead of minus 110 is huge over the long term. There's no reason to leave any pennies behind. Shop your lines, go to oddshopper.awesemo.com. That's my plug.
All right. I got my big Alex Len stance, and I have 10% Alex Len on DraftKings.
Okay. I like it. I have a hard time justifying it with Jokic and Jared Allen's value, Embiid, Gobert, Towns, Capella. Like, there's so much raw point ceiling that even if he's valuable, I think it's too big for him today on FanDuel. You would have to play 28 minutes.
DraftKings is different just because you have to roster two centers. But the other thing also is just Daniel Gafford is so popular. And by the way, I'm overweight to the field on Daniel Gafford also. And like I said before, I did set a rule in Fantasy Cruncher really quick that to not include Alex Len and Daniel Gafford in the same lineups. But I like the leverage on it.
Have we gotten any ownership recently? I remember saying 9 seconds ago. All right, so we got another ownership update 1 minute ago. I'm going to take a peek at that right now. 8 minutes left until lock. How are you feeling right now?
Honestly, this big I never really feel that good, to be honest. I mean, given what was put in front of us, I feel about as good as I could feel about it, though.
I'm just waiting for the true bomb to come in the next couple of minutes. Because what are we actually still waiting on?
I mean, for me, we're not going to get it anytime soon, but the Maxi Kleber news is very, very important.
Yeah, I agree. Wow, Ben Simmons picking up quite a bit of ownership on FanDuel at 7,400, and I'm not going to be there. And it's going to happen tonight. I can feel it.
You know what's the other one is? And by the way, it's the same game. Another reason also to get exposure to that game is tail end of a back-to-back where Sean Holmes coming off an injury. I'm not convinced he's going to play.
Yeah, same. I've left him out all day.
I like getting a lot of exposure to the Dallas Sacramento game and just giving myself flexibility to make swaps to whatever value plays open up. I don't know who it's going to be, but there's going to be really strong value there.
I'm so nervous about this Jokic and Embiid combination on FanDuel right now, just given their ownership. It's just bumming me out. I don't know what to do with it. I'm hoping that I can push Embiid a little bit higher, but we're getting to the point now where I just need to get this stuff in. Most exposed players for me: Haliburton, Cedi Osman, Jared Allen, Collins, AD, Isaiah Roby, Daniel Gafford, DeJounte Murray. Yes, I said Anthony Davis.
Wow, so you did end up on Anthony Davis.
We have him projected for 6% ownership. I got to take that shot at power forward. Like, Pascal Siakam's 9K and twice as owned. I don't really see a reason that should be the case. Even if AD's playing 30 minutes. He's just better. We got to remember, like, he's back. If he's back at full strength and with no minutes limit, there's no LeBron James on the floor. Like, his usage rate goes up considerably.
So my most rostered players, by the way: Tim Hardaway Jr., Nikola Jokic, Cedi Osman, Daniel Gafford, Goran Dragic, Russell Westbrook, Luka Doncic. In terms of contrarian options, I'd say like my biggest stand is probably having 10% of Alex Len in lineups that don't have Daniel Gafford.
Let's say that you knew for a fact that Anthony Davis was really unencumbered for today. What is 92? What should $9,200 Anthony Davis be owned at? Because to me, that should be like 30% with no LeBron James.
Let's see. By the way, he had a 39% usage, 39% usage rate last game. So I think it's a little bit of an unfair question asked though, because we have to because the reason his ownership is low because we have to consider that he's going to be limited in some capacity.
Why? Like I'm not trying to be difficult. Like he played 28 minutes, and now that they're saying that the minutes restriction is gone. Even if he just plays 28 minutes, I think that he should be at least 6% owned.
Yeah, I mean that's I don't think he would get to. I mean, yeah, if there was absolutely no restriction at all, we had seen Anthony Davis play, totally healthy for a long period of time. He was playing his, normal 35, 36 minutes, and yeah, then he would be probably like 40 to 50% owned.
By the way, they are setting up Chuma Okeke to guard him today.
Yeah, it's not ideal for the Magic anyway. Not they, or it is ideal considering they're not trying to win games.
One of Anthony Davis or Andre Drummond is going to go absolutely berserk today.
All right, so I'm just gonna say it's going to be Montrezl Harrell that goes berserk today now.
Sure, I mean, but like Wendell Carter Jr. can only guard one of those dudes. To me, it's my own fault. Like, I feel like I didn't talk about that at all, but Orlando is not equipped to handle this. Think about how much bigger Andre Drummond is than Mo Bamba.
Yeah, I mean, we briefly talked about Anthony Davis because I'd said there was a point in the day where I was considering playing him on DraftKings before I had, consideration going towards, when Luka was up in the air, Westbrook was up in the air. Once those guys were in, then Anthony Davis just got taken out of my player pool.
Yeah, I get it. 3 minutes to go. I guess I should grab these lineups and push forward and put this stuff in, huh? You got any final thoughts on your exposures?
No, I just I went over some of my most rostered players before. I think we're on a lot of the same guys also. By the way, something else I'll mention is just because I mentioned I have 20% Maxi Kleber in my lineups right now.
Okay.
If he ends up playing, that number is going to go up for me. If he ends up being out, obviously that number goes down. And
does it?
Yeah, it does. Dwight Powell's probably I'll end up swapping onto a ton. Maybe Willie Cauley-Stein if he ends up starting. But that's somebody I think is a really good placeholder to have right now.
I am uploading as we speak. Just watching that little blue dot thing go. All right, Sunflower with the super chat. Luka and Ja or Westbrook and Devin Booker in a DK GPP.
Boy, I like Luka. I like Westbrook. I don't have exposure to Devin Booker or Ja Morant, but I'll go with the Luka and Ja side. I just don't like to roster guys going up against the Knicks.
That's a very reasonable stance to take. I feel pretty good about this, other than the fact that a lot of my night is hanging on Cedi Osman. But at the same time, at the flat minimum at small forward, I can only be so upset about that combination. I feel like I'm a little bit more spread out at small forward and shooting guard than I would like to be. But at the same time, that's what happens when you have two individual people in 80% of your lineups.
Hey, Cedi Chalk and I went well yesterday. Why can't it go well again?
Cedi at 3,500, Tyrese Haliburton at 6,100. Those are my two biggest plays here. And then I'm just going to cross my fingers that Jared Allen is as good as it seems today.
I think you should feel pretty good about Jared Allen on FanDuel.
I do. I certainly do, especially with those guys out. So cue the Jared Allen foul trouble, and they go to, I don't even know who the backup center is for Cleveland off the top of my head.
I mean,
Kevin
just play,
Love,
they just.
It's Kevin Gale. Yeah, it's Kevin Gale. Which I didn't even list him on Cleveland. I had to make that change today. I wish that I would have got to more Joel Embiid. I'm not going to lie. I have 8%. I feel underrepresented. I have 19 of Nikola Jokic. I just really couldn't get away from Jared Allen. I have an aggressive amount of Jared Allen.
No, I understand that. I think Jared Allen, at least looking at the FanDuel pricing, is the best points per dollar play on FanDuel. DraftKings, not somebody I got to. I didn't get to Joel Embiid on DraftKings either.
Yeah. Hopefully I end up being wrong. 6:59, and what do we got left? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are locked. We made it. And honestly, I'm going to be perfectly honest. That wasn't as bad as I was expecting. By the way, Spurs lineup Murray, White, DeRozan, Johnson, and Jakob Poeltl. So nothing too crazy there. That could have been worse.
Yeah, it could have been better. It could have been worse, but such is life. That's the way things go.
I think we dodged like pretty sizable bullets there. I was expecting it to be a little bit more hectic than it was, but a lot of it came out during that lead up to the show. So any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Nah, this is my favorite time of the day. This is that 5-minute overlap where I get to finalize my baseball crunch.
There you go. Enjoy that. Guys, thank you for being here. Please hit the like button on your way out. We're north of 700, so I love it. Subscribe to the channel, notification bell. Check out the Slate Starter podcast. That will be out in the middle of the night. I don't really know what time that goes up, but later on. I think they record like during the end of the slate, if I remember correctly. And then process show in the morning. We go and we do it all again tomorrow. That's all I got. Good luck, everybody. We're out of here. Ay, caramba.